Roll call, please.
Mayor Breeden.
Here.
Mr. Heyman.
Here.
Mr. Maurer.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Here.
We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Okay, and approval of the agenda. I understand there are no changes. Motion?
Moved.
Second.
Okay.
Please vote.
and- Oh, that's right. We're voting.
Stall. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, then we will go into closed session with legal counsel. Is there, and I see there's, Dave, did you have any public comment on closed session? Okay, we'll catch you later. Be back in a flash. Yeah.
It was warm back there.
Okay. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Eric, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I was going to say, would you lead us in the closed session? Thank you.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing, please.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have of serving Thee, and we're thankful for the many blessings that we receive on that by Thy hand. We're thankful for this wonderful city that we live in and this great nation that we are a part of. We pray that Thy Spirit will be with us to guide and direct us as we make decisions tonight. They would be according to Thy will. And we ask this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated.
Yeah, you didn't have your mic on.
City Attorney's report.
Madam Mayor, the City Council met in closed session on the item described in the agenda. Report from staff, direction given, no final action taken. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask council to come up to the podium with all of us together, and we've got some presentations to make. I have the first one, and I would like to Carol Sue McKenzie to come up, please. And Eric, would you come up also? I would like you probably already know what person asked for this to be on the agenda, but I want him to take the blame and the glory. So, okay. This is special recognition. This certificate is awarded to Carol Sue McKenzie, May 1st, 2019, in recognition of Carol Sue McKenzie's 29 years of conducting the annual Strings Around the World concert and 40 years of music education provided to generations of families in Ridgecrest. This is presented by myself as mayor and all the council members, and we are so proud to give this to you. And Eric, would you... this was his idea, and I want him to take the glory and the Big Mouth Award, because we are so proud to thank you for what you did 30 years. You're an amazing woman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
do you want to stand next to that man?
I guess so. Come here. Actually, this is the right man to be right beside her. That's the right
That's
man.
your student?
Yeah. One for one. So is he.
Did you have something you'd like to say?
Me?
Yes.
Thank you very much for this. Thank you very much for the recognition. It's been my pleasure to teach. I don't know how many people ask me how many students I taught, and I have no idea. But 40 to 45 every year. So I'm just grateful to the city of Ridgecrest for recognizing. I will miss being here. I'm going to retire from teaching, and both my children are down in the Phoenix area, so we're going down to Arizona and moving. So I will miss Ridgecrest, and it's a great place.
Safe travels and many
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and let the rest of the council.
All right, so Ricka, would you like to step down here, please? Okay, so next we have a proclamation of the City of Ridgecrest, California, for the Municipal Clerks Week, May 5th to 11th of 2019. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of the government, exists throughout the world, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants, and whereas the office of the municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas the municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the municipal clerk. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest does hereby recognize the week of May 5th through May 11th, 2019 as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our City Clerk, Ricka Charlon, for the vital services she performs and her exemplary dedication to the community she represents. Proclaimed this first day of May 2019 by our Mayor, Peggy Breeden, Council members Lindsay Stevens, Wallace Martin, Mike Maurer, and myself, Scott Heyman. I'd like to personally thank you, Ricka. So good job. So, thank you very much.
All right, if the Poppy representatives want to come up. So this is a proclamation of the City of Ridgecrest for National Poppy Day, May 24th, 2019. Whereas America is the land of freedom, preserved and protected willingly and freely by citizen soldiers. And whereas millions who have answered the call to arms have died on the field of battle. And whereas a nation at peace must be reminded of the price of war and the debt owed to those who have died in war. And whereas the red poppy is a nationally recognized symbol of sacrifice worn by Americans since World War I to honor those who have served and died for our country in all wars. Sorry. And whereas the American Legion Auxiliary has pledged to remind America annually of this debt through the distribution of the memorial flower. Now therefore be it proclaimed, the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest does hereby proclaim this May 24th, 2019 as National Poppy Day, and ask that all citizens pay tribute to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of freedom by wearing the memorial poppy on this day. Proclaimed this first day of May 2019 by Peggy Breeden, Lindsay Stevens, Wallace Martin, Scott Heyman, and Mike Maurer. So thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much for this beautiful proclamation. As a veteran myself, I'm very proud to be able to offer these red flowers. They are very beautiful, but they symbolize more than that. And They are made by our veterans in 4 areas throughout the state, at the Chula Vista Veterans Home, the San Diego Hospital Outreach Program, Long Beach Hospital, and at Yountville up north. And they are paid for every flower that they make. And when you consider that all through our state, over 45,000 poppies are ordered every year for our units to put out to the public in their areas. 10 years ago, when I was state president, I visited each of these 4 places and watched the veterans make these flowers. And I will tell you, my hands were pretty nimble at that time, and it's not an easy task. And they do a wonderful job. And we take pride in our Tie to the Poppy program. They're much more to the American Legion Auxiliary than those we serve. Poppies symbolize the sacrifice of our United States service members killed while protecting our nation. We wear the flower to honor those fallen heroes and in support of our military, the veterans, and their families. American Legion Auxiliary members distribute this red creeper poppy in exchange for donations. All the money that is collected directly supports service members, veterans, and their families through the American Legion Auxiliary's outreach programs. Poppies are pretty, but the flower's impact is significant. Thank you very much. This is proclamation. Okay. This is Holly Woodstock. She's one of our poppy gals that you'll see at the cemetery at the end of the month, distributing, and she's going to go through and ask if anybody would like a flower and a donation. Thank you.
Wait. I want to say thank you. You are such an amazing woman.
Oh, thank you.
You've always been there. And look the others, the council members.
Thank you.
My proclamation is for National Day of Prayer. Is anyone from the Kiwanis Club here? Pardon? Oh, Mr. Bird. Come on up. How you doing? Whereas the morning of May 2nd, 2019 has been designated as the time for the National Prayer Breakfast, a yearly occasion when leaders of all faiths gather together to combine their prayers to strengthen the spiritual base of our nation. And whereas the tradition of a national prayer breakfast was established in February 1953 in Washington, D.C. by both houses of Congress, with the first Thursday in May established as a firm day for this event by President Reagan on May 5th, 1988, and has been celebrated in the Indian Wells Valley since 1971. And whereas the Ridgecrest Kiwanis Club has planned a local observance of the National Prayer Breakfast at the Desert Christian Center on the morning of Thursday, May 2nd. And whereas this year our community and the whole nation face challenges that call for our most solemn and reverent concern, for deep wisdom and acute perception, and for renewed spiritual strength in our approach to these challenges. And whereas the City of Ridgecrest recognizes these challenges, the need for spiritual strength, and the efficacy of the prayers of many faiths, now therefore be it proclaimed, the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest does hereby proclaim that the City of Ridgecrest joins in the observation of National Prayer Day and Mayor's Prayer Breakfast the morning of Thursday, May 2nd, 2019, and urges all citizens to participate wholeheartedly in this event declared this first day of May. By the way, the breakfast is at 6:15 tomorrow morning. So, very thanks, Mike. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I have something.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Tomorrow will be the 68th observation of the National Day of Prayer. The Kiwanis Club of Ridgecrest is hosting the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast in conjunction with the National Day of Prayer, the 24th year. Tomorrow our council, our mayor, plus the city manager will be honored at the Desert Christian Center at 6:15 breakfast, 6:30 for the program, finishing at 7:40. Our speaker is Dr. Ralph Neighbor III, the leader of the Church Revitalization Initiative Team for the California Southern Baptist Convention, residing in Clovis, California. Other dignitaries from our county, the base, our city will be honored. The motto this year is love one another. I believe the United States of America needs to follow that motto. I have tickets for those in the audience who would like to buy one. Casey's Barbecue is our caterer, and the price is $8. The Kiwanis Club of Ridgecrest thanks the city for this proclamation. And one final note, our Kiwanis Luncheon meets tomorrow at Casey's from 11:50 to 1:10, and the public is invited. Thank you very much.
This is another proclamation that gives me great pleasure. Carol, would you both come up, please? Both of you. Carol is being honored, but she is represented well by the Women's Center. I have worked with them for 35 years, and very proud to have a very small association with the marvelous work they do. So I'm going to read this to you. Whereas Carol B. Croft began her career with the Women's Center High Desert Incorporated on May 31st, 1989, and whereas Carol B. Croft was promoted to Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Center High Desert in 1993, and whereas the Women's Center High Desert was originally a grassroots program dedicated to domestic violence and women's issues. With Carol's leadership and vision, their services now include sexual assault, child abuse, stalking, human trafficking, prison rape elimination, sorry. You don't do that, do you? Sorry, everybody. And teen dating violence. And whereas Carol B. Croft was instrumental in the development, funding, and construction of a 52-bed shelter facility in 2007, and whereas during her time as CEO, Carol B. Croft has received recognition for her dedication in serving victims in Eastern Kern County. In 2009, she received the Key for the City from the Ridgecrest City Council, as well as the Challenge Coin from China Lake-based Commanding Officer Gary Peterson. She was past Woman of the Year honoree for Beta Sigma Phi, and for the Ridgecrest City Council declared December 25th, 2014 Carol B. Croft Day. And whereas our community is a safer place having Carol at the helm of the Women's Center High Desert Incorporated, she has fostered excellent working relationship with other local and regional and national service organizations and programs, numerous law enforcement agencies, and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. And whereas Carol B. Croft continues to be a great role model for her staff, a mentor to others in our community, and an amazing wife and mother of her family. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the City of Ridgecrest and the City Council does hereby recognize and thank Carol B. Croft for her 30 years of outstanding service and dedication to the citizens of the East Kern County and Ridgecrest, and we declare this the first day of May 2019. I, as Mayor, Lindsay Stephen as Council Mayor Pro Tem, Wallace Martin as Vice Mayor, Scott Heyman as Council Member, and Mike Maurer as Council Member. So if you would receive that, I am so proud to give this to you. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the council for the proclamation, and I also just want to say I wouldn't be able to do any of those things that or on this proclamation without my staff. I have a wonderful staff, and we have been growing and adding more funding. And Karen Stone is my right-hand person. None of this, I wouldn't be able to go to work every day without Karen. And I want to say I'm not retiring. The Women's Center High Desert is a nonprofit, so I will not be able to ever retire. I will have to just sit at my desk and hope that they don't wheel me out to a home sometime. So, but thank you very much, and I appreciate everything that the community has done, and keep supporting the Women's Center. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Jed, where are you? Well, I mean, all of you can come up. This is a proclamation. Whereas the members honors the National Police Week, whereas the members of the Ridgecrest PD play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Ridgecrest, and whereas it is important that all citizens understand the duties, responsibility, hazards, sacrifices of the law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people of the community for safeguarding life and property, for protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the RPD unceasingly provide a vital public service, now therefore, I, Peggy Breeden, Mayor of the City, well, I'm not Peggy, but Mayor of the City of Ridgecrest, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 12th through May 18th as Police Week in the City of Ridgecrest in honor of the law enforcement officers past and present who have rendered a dedicated service to the community, and do further proclaim May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, or who have become disabled in the performance of their duty. Declared this first day of May 2019, Mayor Breeden and all council. Congratulations, fellas. I don't know what you want to do with pictures here. All right, everybody come up. Yeah, everybody come up. No, I want the picture. Huh? No, can I be in the picture? Can I be in the picture in case I ever get a speeding ticket? I can have this thing posted up. Huh? What do you want? Oh, no, cut it out. I'm not agreeing to that. Okay, what are we doing? Oh, everybody's going up there.
Scoot down further. Down that way.
All right, okay.
You're going to be hiding back there, Peggy. You're too short.
She always hides.
Use the other side of the phone.
You can get in the back. You can see your face.
You guys are hiding. Okay, let's have Wallace and let's go down here. And Jet, let's have you down make an introduction. Okay. I think we're gonna scooch in this a little more. You guys like each other. Don't go too far, and then I'll be able to see
Peggy, get up here.
Make a hole. Miss Mayor, you can come stand next to me.
I'm proudly next to you. Okay, here we go.
Look, Noah, Mike, you and y'all come up.
Make sure you can see me.
Wait, hold on. We like it back here.
Okay, here we go. Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3, suck it in.
Yeah. Matt, give the mic. Hogan. Bartlett. And Rinaldi.
Thank you.
So I will say that since I've had to start doing these here at council, this is one of the proud moments that we always get. So recognizing these guys for their great work that they do. So these three, John Bartlett, Corey Rinaldi, and Mike Ogus, on November 18th of 2018, they were dispatched to a subject who wasn't breathing and turning pale. Officer Rinaldi and Officer Bartlett quickly arrived on scene and assessed the situation. And the subject was breathing, but very faintly, and collapsed in Officer Bartlett's arms. He put him on the floor, and they immediately started CPR. Liberty Ambulance arrived, and the subject was flown out, and because of these three, he's still alive today. So thank you, guys. They prepared 30-minute speeches for all of you.
Father said he covered it all.
God, he's always on it. Always.
Here, take your earpiece.
Take it off?
Yeah, just take it out. It looks really weird.
My collar. What? Get a picture.
All right, guys. Let's come together. First, I'd like up front. And if you would hand one.
Sure. We'll go up here.
We got more of these. Yeah, got a handful.
Oh, we can do that. No, I want to get a separate photo. Okay, because I might do more than one story.
Thanks, Gene. Sorry, but I have quite a few of these, which is a great thing because these guys have saved many people. So, Officer Garibay, Richie Garibay, Officer John Bartlett, again, Officer Rinaldi, it's actually a detective now, so, and Officer Ogus, again. Busy shift, I guess, when you guys were together. So this took place August 29th, 2018. These gentlemen were dispatched to a suicidal subject who had already cut her wrists. Upon arrival, they located the victim in the bathroom of the residence, suffering from an arterial bleed due to the self-inflicted injury. Recognizing the victim had lost a lot of blood, they attempted to render medical aid, at which time the victim started to fight them. And they were able to take the victim under control, exit the residence, apply a tourniquet, and get the medical attention that that person needed. They were also flown out, and again, these officers need to be commended because that person is still with us today. So, thank you guys. I'll get in front. One more. Detective Clinton, Officer Rowland, and Officer Hallmark. Okay, on March 25th of this year, these gentlemen were dispatched to a residence regarding an 18-month-old child that was not breathing. So while responding, they were advised the baby was breathing, however, was having a difficult time. Upon arrival, Officer Rowland, Detective Clinton noticed that the baby was having a severe allergic reaction from ingesting some peanut oil. They didn't wait. They grabbed the baby, got in the car, 2 of them with the baby. The other guy cleared traffic as they took the baby to the hospital. And Carol, would you mind coming up?
So the baby was a resident in our shelter, and we have a side door that we use off to the side, and we opened that. They came right in, and Detective Clinton was in dad mode as well as being law enforcement. He dropped everything. They scooped up the baby and took him immediately to the emergency room. And we were later notified by the emergency room doctor, had they not done that, the baby probably would not have made it. So we're just very proud of you guys, and thank you so much for always being there for us.
Oh, you wanted to say something?
They already have pictures of that.
Do you want to get a picture with council again like we did the last one? Huh?
You want to get all of them together?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Is there another one?
No,
No.
that was
okay.
it.
There's like 3 different. Okay, that's it. We just thought all the awards just in case.
Do you want the awardees and the council picture? Awardees and council?
Sure.
Turn sideways.
Angle me around. Would you mind backing the stroller up just a bit for me?
Take a knee.
Since baby is safely in mama's arms, I thought we could get away with that.
I agree.
There we go. Now we're cooking. Right on. Okay. Mike, step that way just a smidge. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay, stay there, stay there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take our trash.
Do we have a team or do we have a team? Thank you all so very much. You are the best. Okay, we are done with all of our presentations. And now it is time for public comment. I'll wait for you all to get out just a little bit. Give them a chance. Persons wishing to address the City Council on matters that are within the Council's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. So please come forward if you want to speak under public comment. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor Breeden and council members. I'm Scott O'Neill, Executive Director of the Indian Wells Valley Economic Development Corporation, 825 North Down Street, Suite B. I've been out of town, but yesterday I took the time to watch the video from the special council session you had last Wednesday. In my view, it was a sad day for Ridgecrest. Let me explain. First of all, you should not chastise the press for doing its job in serving the public. It seems you feel that the recent newspaper article on the hospital's emergency room and heliport improvement were unfair and resulted in a special council session. To, I guess, clear the air, or maybe to ameliorate shame. I don't know your intentions, but I will tell you how I feel and what I think. Our press does a very good job reporting on what's happening in our community, whether that news stems from the public or from the government. I have worked with our papers for a long time in both my job on the base and with the EDC. And I have routinely found that they go out of their way to be accurate and fair. I guess the city has had different experiences, and their comments the other night suggest a recent article was fraught with inaccuracies and it was unfair. I have to wonder, it's the same press. Furthermore, I fundamentally don't see how such a conclusion can be drawn. This council itself has made statements in this chamber following my recent public statements on the shortcomings of our planning and building departments. Agreeing with my summation and acknowledging the failings of the city. Yes, the message portrayed by the newspaper and by my comments is a hard one to be, but it is accurate. It's our city's building and planning processes need work, so don't blame the press, own the truth. Regarding the special session, I can deduce a couple things, but mostly I want to yell QED. Quod erat demonstratum. My point is proven. The session demonstrated clearly that we have a problem in Ridgecrest. The staff took time to carefully defend itself, citing chapter and verse about how they thought the hospital had failed. It must have taken our staff 8 to 10 hours to put together their briefing, and did not once cite any failings on the city's part. Do you really think the problem resides wholly with the hospital? Do you think the city demonstrated a spirit of collaboration and partnership or a culture of friendly to development? Wouldn't it have been nice if those hours used to build their case would have been spent actually trying to help the hospital understand what needs to be done to secure a set of permits to improve a vital service for our citizens? In working to build their case, it took staff only a few minutes to write an email to the Department of Aeronautics to understand what was required from the state regarding a heliport. And it took only one day to get a response. Wouldn't it have been nice if the staff had, at the beginning of its dealings with the hospital, had thought, wow, what a great project this is for our community and for the well-being of our citizens, and what does the city need to do to help get this going? That email would have been written for a positive motive rather than a defensive one. Wouldn't it have been nice if there had been a sense of partnership formed right up front to identify the challenges associated with building a heliport, something we don't often do, and to work through them together? Yes, we do have a problem, and unfortunately, like any problem, it cannot be resolved unless there is first acknowledgement the problem exists. And so far I hear words, but I worry they're hollow. A number of times in the special session, the city attorney reinforced the need for processes to be followed. I wholly agree. Unfortunately, he misses a few key points. To be successfully followed, they first must be defined. And fundamentally, these processes, there are two actors, not one, the city and the developer. Both have to do their parts. The city has a role to state requirements, issue permits, and ensure requirements are met. The developer has to do the design and document the improvements to demonstrate the requirements are to be met. It's bilateral, but to put all the onus on the developer or the blame on the developer is not right. Surely it is not the spirit of cooperation or partnership that does engender a culture of being friendly to new development. I have asked the city to take immediate action to define, repair, and document their planning and building processes. Developers want to follow the process to satisfy your requirements. They just need to know what's expected and how they can resolve differences of opinion. Let me move from addressing defensive behavior to trust. There seems to be a gap in trust between the city and the citizens of this town. It was clearly illustrated in the recent ballot on Parks and Recreation District. I heard universally that our cities would like to improve our parks and recreation facilities, but there was little trust that the solution offered by the city was actually going to rectify the situation. I think one citizen who spoke at this podium nailed it when she asked, when did that meeting where we actually discussed a set of alternatives happen? Yes, there was a meeting. In fact, actually it was called a workshop, but it was not open to discussion of alternatives. Unfortunately, it was to dictate a way forward. The city was warned of this at the onset, but the message was not heard. This does not engender trust. I'm wondering if the recent closed council session called to discuss public employment performance evaluation was really to have a private discussion of what was about those unfair stories in the newspaper. The stated purpose, the timing, the follow-on, the behavior, and the perceptions easily point to a different motive. Whether true or not, or expedient, it did not serve to build trust. Ridgecrest, I think we have a problem. There are just some things I think that we each need to take time to seriously reflect on. I am not saying anyone is bad or dishonest or not wanting the best for our community. We are where we are, and no one in particular is the cause. What I am saying is that emotion is fogging our direction and distorting our needed action. We must set aside the emotion, clearly state and face our problems, and set a course of resolution. None of us individually has the means, the knowledge, or the experience to set or follow this course. Together, I think we do have the wherewithal. And if needed, we have the means to hire some professionals to help. It's not the first time a city has overcome this challenge. First step is to set aside our pride and acknowledge our problems. My biggest fear is 1 year from now we're going to be in the same place. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you trying to wind it up. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stan Rotoro. Before I get to my primary concern, I'd like to state that I had an opportunity to drive my vehicle on McLean Street and East Craft Avenue earlier this week. I must admit I was very pleased with the outcome of the maintenance that was performed on those two roads, and I look forward to more of that work being done in the near future. I would especially like to recognize Councilwoman Stevens, who I think was a driving force behind getting that done, and without whom we still wouldn't be there. So thank you, Lindsay. Now I'd like to go back into a little bit of the history on our new wastewater treatment plant. Going through some old documents, I discovered that the origin of the wastewater treatment plant actually dates back to 1993, when the usage of that plant exceeded 75% of its capacity. And the Lahontan Regional Water District ordered us to expand the unit or shut down. It turns out that a combination of things that happened after that sort of eliminated that problem, but our economy went in the toilet, I think as all you remember, shortly after, the mid-90s, and also the state mandated that we conserve water. So it turns out that we are now well below the 75% of the capacity. However, if we go back to about 2010, the city claimed that the new plant was due. We needed a new plant still, even though we were well below the required capacity, because the plant was deteriorating. And if you were to go back and look at some of the comments made by some of the staff, the wastewater treatment plant was on its last legs, and if we didn't do something soon, we could have a bad emergency happen. So we had to do something soon. It turns out that since then, in that time frame, our fees have increased from $120 per year, which were actually fairly low considering what everybody else was paying in our region, but they were paying the bills, so it doesn't matter. And they were increased from $120 per year to $360 per year. Now, the discussions with the Navy, based upon my understanding, have stalled. We started discussions back in 2012. It's now 2019. The only thing we've accomplished to do, besides a couple technical reports from contractors, is to build a major slush fund. It is time for the public to be involved in what's going on. We cannot continue on the path that we're on right now. I am asking for the second time for the city to share the tentative Navy agreement with the public. There's absolutely no reason to keep this thing hidden. Let's just do the right thing, give it to the public, let the public look at what is in it. Any questions?
I had requested that we put that on a future agenda item. Is it on there?
Yeah, we plan to bring it to infrastructure. I've asked Commander Benson to attend. I believe Mr. Kersley stated that because the current XO retired, that Commander Benson has assumed a significant number of his duties, so he'll be the one responding to Mr. Ratora's insinuations of the status of the agreement. And I can respond further on this during my city manager's comment.
But is this going to be brought up at a future council meeting, and if so, when?
If council wants it, I'm going to give you a report during my manager's comment. I don't know how appropriate it is to bring negotiations with the Navy in the open. If council wishes us to do that, we can. I don't know if the Navy would be too enthralled with that.
Well, I'm wondering if we can present it to the public as to whatever level is legally appropriate without getting into the C, D, and E part that's inappropriate. I mean, we're what, 2012 to 2019?
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. We've been doing this now for 7 years. At some point in time, we don't have a schedule. Let's face it. If we were a business, there wouldn't be one member on this panel that would have a job tomorrow. It's ridiculous to continue the way we're going, not having a schedule, not knowing what we're doing. We've been told that there is a tentative agreement with the Navy. And all I'm asking for is, the thing is, if the council doesn't agree with that tentative agreement, we throw it away and we start all over. Well, we've had 7 years. At some point in time, we got to stop building up the slush fund, and we need to actually, if indeed the plant was in as bad a shape of repair as we were told it was when they started this whole thing, then obviously we need to get something done, and we haven't done anything. So all I'm asking for, and having the captain come to a committee meeting or a commander, let's face it, they have no authority to say anything. The only thing that is really relevant is the tentative agreement that we assume that we have with the Navy. Whether or not, we don't know that the council is going to approve it. We don't know that the public's going to like it. The public is the one that's going to pay for this thing. The public should have an input.
Well, to me, it's kind of like the Downs project. Mr. Matthews stood up and raised a holy hell at one council meeting. Dave, you're here if you can hear me. When he was saying this thing has been running around for what, Dave, 20 years? 30 years, right? 30 years. So he came up pounding the podium, and I thanked him for that before, and I thank him now, and I thank you for standing up now. The issue is we either need to put, this is an old-fashioned, I'm showing my age, so everybody under 50, I guess, forget it. You won't know what it is. But the issue is you need to either put a dime in the booth, and now it would be $1 in the phone, or get out of the booth. I mean, there's a point at which 7 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, I agree with you. Either we have some sort of an agreement or we don't, and I think we ought to address it. We addressed Down Street, did we not? And Mike brought it to the table, and we voted on it. Now it's done. So I'm just saying we don't need to impose on any commander. They do not need to come here. We're not putting anybody in any spot or any corner or legal liability. It's just fair that the public know after 7 years, where are we going with this? That we need to continue to bring it to a head, to get a conclusion, to draft something new. I think that Stan's request is perfectly valid.
Ron, you're going to discuss this under your comments, correct?
Correct. Right now, this is public comment.
Okay. This is a policy issue. There's no legal reason not to release it. It's up to the council to decide, do you want to keep the public in the dark, or do you want to release the information? It's that simple. The lawyer can't give you any legal information. The city manager has an opinion. It's his opinion, all right? It's a policy issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Testing. Good.
Yeah, Dave Matthews. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I just thought now that my name has been mentioned, I'll step up and say a couple other words. I agree with Stan. Seems like it's taken an awful long time, and I know we've had the congressman's office involved, but maybe sometimes you just have to take a chainsaw like Denny Klein does and step up and do something. But I too watched the special council meeting via the internet last week, and I have to say that I was not really aware of what the problem was with the heliport and the hospital emergency room expansion until after the meeting, after the infrastructure meeting last week. I did not know that the emergency room was going to be moved. I did not know that the heliport was going to be moved. And I did not know that we had a 3-story building across the 4-story, across the road in what I think appears to be the sump, as I called it, on North China Lake Boulevard over there. So I don't know, first of all, why we need a 4-story building in this town, especially a hotel. And secondly, I hope something's being done about the sump. And thirdly, I think if the public really knew what was going on, and maybe the city too, we could have got that solved a long time ago. Now, the other thing in that special meeting was, of course, the defeat of the Parks and Reclamation District. Okay, so now what? I hope people are stepping up and considering what our options are, because we just can't let them sit there. Something has to be done. And during that hearing, not the special meeting, but the hearing before, when the votes were counted, there was a number of young people that are younger than me that stepped up here and said, well, I'm going to start paying attention. Well, please, I hope you do. Not only to what the city is doing, what your city is doing, but what your state is doing and what your nation is doing. So you've got if you want any hints, just give me a call. I'm in the phone book. So that's all I have for tonight, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Good evening, Council. I'd say you would think me and Dave staged this, although we haven't discussed anything that he was going to say. But I'd like to just backtrack to what Mr. Ritora has addressed multiple times up here. And he's just talking about getting some agreements finally finalized. However, there's another problem, and I'll just throw this out here for you to think about. When the prior councils instituted the process of tripling the sewer fee 7 years ago, because, well, we had to do something with the sewer plant. It's in bad shape. 7 years later, we're not even close to even starting the process, and yet we're still collecting the fees. I thought that when you held the Prop 218 meeting and taxed people in order to accomplish something, that you were supposed to have in mind to actually do that instead of just collect money. I'd say we're getting close to the point where that increased sewer fee is bordering on fraud on the public, and the council needs to think about that. I have some other aspects of that I'll talk about briefly. Now let's talk about, well, really wasn't talked about much at the last special meeting, and that's the defeat of the proposed parks tax. Now, this is not just a defeat. When something gets voted down by an 80% no vote, and I'll just target this at our city manager, he was really the primary mover and pusher for this tax. It was not done properly with hearings and discussions through the council with the public. I would say that really amounts to pretty much the equivalent of the public taking you out, Mr. Strand, and dunking your head in the fountain pool outside. Sorry, but that's really, I've never even known anything to go down by that kind of margin. It's not surprising in that the people all over California, and Ridgecrest is included, are just tired of being taxed. It was, stated, I don't know how many times, well, it's not very much. Oh, well, it's only $4 a month. Well, it's just a little bit. Well, yeah, but we think we figured out that all those little bits have stacked up to quite a bit. And it's getting hard to pay for stuff that we normally have to pay for just to go get through life because we're shelling out so much to the state, the county, and the city. So let's talk about how you can regain or maybe eliminate some of that distrust for tax. How about having a meeting and discussing the sewer fee, and let's bring out some facts to the public that nobody really sits down to think about, but I'll just throw them out here. In 30 years from now, we will have garnered about $120 million more into the sewer fund. And during that time, we're probably only going to spend maybe 40, 50, 60 million out of that. So we get to the time when we can begin to claim that what's going to be the new sewer plant is now an old sewer plant, and we're going to have more than enough money to pay flat out cash for it right there. Well, I don't believe that's the way the process is supposed to work. In other words, like I've said multiple times, we're being taxed too much for the sewer fund. Let's talk about what's already been brought out, not by myself, but about the Measure B tax, which the public somehow was snookered into agreeing to raise on themselves in the last vote up to a full 1%, which now that also brings in about $4 million a year. And the statement of misuse of funds was made by Mr. Morgan, who's on the Measure B committee. I think we should hold a meeting and ask Mr. Morgan to delineate the details of his concerns and why he was disgusted enough to leave the committee. In other words, let's talk about demonstrating to the public that we really don't want to tax them any more than we absolutely have to. And maybe when something like parks comes around, then people will be more inclined to say, well, I'll give you a little bit more. And oh, by the way, I've offered to 3 council members concrete suggestions on how we can pay not what the city manager wanted, but enough more money towards parks out of funds that you already get. In other words, you could help solve the problem that was touted so widely across the city to every civic group that they could get a meeting with money you've already got in your pocket, out of money that the people that are being taxed here have already paid you. So if you're interested in any of this, you know where to contact me.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment and we will come to council announcements. Is there anyone who wishes to make an announcement? Lindsay? Put your microphone. Oh, someone, Wallace?
No, I don't.
Mike? Just reminding everybody about the prayer breakfast tomorrow. Lindsay?
Yes. There is a makeup movie night Friday, May 17th at 8 p.m. here at Freedom Park. It will be Nut Job 2. It's a free event. And then also I'll just, because I heard some misinformation about the splash pad, it's open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and it's free of charge here at Freedom Park as well.
Okay, no other council announcements. We will come to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by city staff and will be approved in one motion if no member of the council or the public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussions is desired by anyone, that item may be removed from the consent calendar and be considered separately with public comment before action is taken. Do any members of the council wish to have any of these items pulled? I will repeat them. Number 8, proposed action to approve draft minutes of the City of Ridgecrest City Council Successor Redevelopment Agency Financing Authority Housing Authority regular meeting dated April 3rd. Number 9, proposed action to approve draft minutes for the City Council's City Successor Redevelopment Agency Financial Authority Housing Authority regular meeting dated October, I've got October on the mind, April 17th. Does any council member wish to have anything pulled? Public wish to have anything pulled? Okay, motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, the next item is discussion and action items. Initial action by the City Council regarding the annual assessment for the Consolidated Landscaping Lighting District number 2012-1, the district, that name, and the adoption of the Resolution 1 initiating proceedings, preliminary approval of the engineer's report, and declaring the city's intention to levy the annual assessments and setting the date of the public hearing. Lauren?
Yes, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, tonight we have a couple items before you that deal with our assessment districts. The first of which is our lighting and landscape maintenance district, and then following this is our special drainage benefit assessment district. Tonight, assisting me tonight, I have Wildan Financial Services, Mr. Jim McGuire, available over the telephone to be available if you have any technical questions or any questions that might be relative to the report. My role is to present the items to you and kind of give you an overview of what we're asking you to do. These are annual requirements that we have to go through for each of these assessment districts. And what we are presenting you is a consolidated report that shows all the zones in each of these assessment districts. And the process is very simple and required by law. Each year, we're required to have an initiation of the proceedings. We're to announce that we're going to start the process. We need the council to preliminarily approve the engineer's report, and then we need to declare the city's intent to levy the annual assessment and setting the date of a public hearing. So by law, we're following that prescribed process for this annual requirement. In the 2012 Lighting Landscape Maintenance District, the only change that we have in the assessments is our annual inflationary rate of 3.5%. So no changes in the amount other than our annual 3.5%. So tonight, City Council, what we're asking you is to approve 3 resolutions. The first of which is to initiate the proceedings, and the second is to preliminary approve the annual engineer's report, and then finally the third resolution is to declare the intent to levy and set a date of the public hearing for May 15th, 2019. This is a simplification of the process. It's an annual process we have to go through to continue the maintenance and operation of your lighting and landscaping that the city's responsible for. And so with that, I turn it over to the council for any questions, and I'd ask to see if Jim is available. Jim, are you out there?
Lauren, can you hear me? I'm here.
Yeah, I hear you well. Council, do you hear Jim okay?
Yes.
Okay, Council, then, if you have any technical questions regarding the report, its preparation, any details, I have Jim available to you.
So I have a couple questions. Is this the area that we received a lot of concern over the landscaping and the level of care it's received?
Yes. This covers several areas. This is a consolidation of all the zones. The Zone 1 is up by the Horton Tract along along College Heights, up by Springer. There's also the Zones 2 and 3, which are around the Walmart area.
Have we hired someone to take care of the landscaping?
We have currently city crews dispatched to maintain the zones.
And we feel that the cost index increase is necessary for sure, or are we just doing that out of routine?
Well, we try to, as with any assessment district, we try to build some sort of reserve for any kind of catastrophic accidents, anything that could happen to the facilities. For instance, in the Horton Tract, those perimeter walls are part of the assessment district. So if we have an incident in which an errant automobile or a truck goes through the wall, the city would be responsible, and those funds would come out of that to take care of that. If we had an irrigation line pop and we washed debris or undermined the sidewalk and the curb and gutter or pavement due to some irrigation rupture, we have reserve funds in order to handle that. So the 3.5% is an inflationary amount to cover inflation and also to help build a reserve in the event that some incident should occur that requires repair or replacement.
I've got a couple of questions. In your report, you mentioned it costs $68,000, basically $69,000 a year. How much money do we have in that account, as you're talking about reserves?
Yeah, we can go to the actual report if you'd like. If you go to the actual report, it shows what the balance is, and it's in a table.
I think it's $13,672.64.
Oh, you've already got to it. Okay.
It's at page 35.
Isn't it page 35 that's got the total amount on expenditures and actual costs for?
That says reserve fund. What's the CIP fund?
I believe that stands for capital improvement, but I'd have to defer to Jim for acronyms.
Yeah, I'd like to know what the difference is for the capital improvement fund and then the reserve fund and what those are used for, because that CIP fund has $41,000 in it.
Jim, can you help us on that?
Sure. The CIP fund, the reserve fund is for operational reserves. That's putting money aside so that you can operate the district or have funds to pay for the bills that you have from July 1st, which is the beginning of the fiscal year, until you actually receive the funds for this year's assessments from the county. So you have like a 7-month period there in which you actually don't have any money coming in yet. So the reserve fund is set aside to accomplish that. So you actually have the money to pay the bills until you get the actual money for this fiscal year. The CIP fund is just that. It's for capital improvements. Part of the development of the assessments for these districts is putting aside money to do plant replacement, irrigation repairs, and major costs associated with the landscaping. For a lot of years, cities just budgeted what it cost to maintain the improvements each year and never put aside money to fix them. So what this is doing now, your budgets now are starting once the reserve fund is funded, then it's setting aside money to go to capital improvements to do the replacement. So at some point in time, when we have enough money there, we may reduce the assessments or lower the, discontinue the collecting money for that particular part of the budget.
I know there's a number of questions. Some of us have been hearing from individuals who have concerns, and one of them, Lauren, you met with them just a few minutes ago, and I know you talked to them before. Do we have any answers for some of those questions that they've asked, and individually even more that we have asked? We'd really like to see where we are with that.
Yes, Honorable Mayor. Yes, we did meet with Mr. and Mrs. Haven, and we went over, and we also had Jim available on the phone to help with any details or any.
They're not here now, are they?
Yes.
There they are. I see them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Nikki and Terry Haven are here. And we did meet with them, and we went over each of their concerns. Bard was also, he actually was the one that spoke most and had most of the knowledge on the issues that the Havens had. But we did go over each of those items to try to explain what each of those items mean, and I think I think both Mr. and Mrs. Haven had an understanding then. Now that doesn't mean that they would agree, and they will have other concerns to express to you tonight, but we did meet with them and we did go over each of their concerns, and I believe that we were successful in explaining what the details are for their concerns.
Mike, would you?
I have a couple problems with the Bowman assessments. Number one, our Parks Department is spread so thin that if you've driven by there are more weeds in that area than there are plants. And so it's not being maintained properly. So to assess properties for weed abatement, which is part of the landscaping, that's not being done, I'm concerned about that. I also have a philosophical problem with a drainage channel that serves the whole south end of town, on which property owners along that channel are end up paying the bulk of the bill. I don't think that's fair or appropriate. And I'm not sure, are all the properties, the Walmart area, all those properties are paying an assessment, is that correct?
I can show you a map in your.
Yeah, I know we have a map here, but I.
Yeah, if you look on
that's part of the
page
problem
30.
I have with the finances is my eyes are getting to the point where that small print is pretty hard to read. But anyway, let's go to the map.
Councilman, just to be able to respond to the area, it's shown on page 39, and that's zones 2 and 3. That's commonly known as the Walmart's lighting landscape area.
So now Walmart's on the yellow, right? Both those yellow parcels.
That's correct, sir. That's zone 2.
And then the properties we're talking about for the couple you met with is the blue to the east of there.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
There's two different families that own those, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Dave Hoagland and Nikki and Terry Haven own those properties, all those properties just to the east.
So since we're on that zone 3 area, so as far as the proportionality of the fees assessed, I'd kind of like a little more clear understanding of, how much is being assessed currently, what are the costs for the improvements, and how it kind of relates to, say, like with in their case, their property taxes that they're paying. So
for that detail, I'd have to defer to Mr. McGuire.
And then along with that, in that zone 3, I was trying to make sense out of the, on page 35 of the report, how much actually has been collected in, in that zone 3, and then how much has it been expended, and in regards to specifically, like in the Havens case, with their property being undeveloped and having 3 streetlights only, how much have they paid? How much of it is been incurred in expenses? For the 3 streetlights that appear on. There's 4 parcels there, and so each 2 parcels has approximately 3 lights that sit in front of them. And so, I guess I'd like to see a breakdown of how much have they paid out since this assessment's been ongoing. How much were those lights, and were they overcharged in the initial year? Are they going to be reimbursed for that? I mean, there's several pretty important issues I'd like to see kind of brought out, and before I can make a decision on approving the furthering of,
I understand.
the Wildan report.
Yes. We wouldn't have that level of detail for you. What you're asking for is quite detailed and would require additional effort to break that down to be able to go exactly item by item to explain or give you those numbers.
Okay. Who would be responsible for assessing the amount that that the property owners are incurring? How much they pay on it?
Well, we would have that. I mean, if you look at the assessment roll, which is on page, let's see, what is that? It's the very end is the assessment roll. And if you look at the very end, you can see the Havens, Terry and Nikki, as well as Mr. Hoagland's assessments.
Do you have a page number?
Let's see.
Well, it's just after page 40.
Yeah, it's page 2 of 2.
So there's 2 pages after page 40. There you go. Those are the pages right there.
That shows the assessment to each of the owners. It shows what the maximum assessment would be and currently what the charge is. It also shows what the equivalent benefit units are for each of those parcels.
This is what it would be for years this year, 19 to 20, but it doesn't show the previous years. Is that
it would just be 3.5% less.
And how long has this district? It's been going on since 2012.
Let's see. No, this annexation occurred, I think, in 16, I believe.
17, 18.
7. Okay.
With the exception of the first year being in the 4,000s, right? The first year was in the 4,000s.
They paid $4,800.
$4,800.
Yes.
4,800.
Yeah.
The high 4,000.
Yeah.
It's been approximately $1,200 a year.
You need to get closer to the microphone.
So, and that is one of the.
It was in the 4,000s. You said 4,800. But the years after that, it's been approximately 1,200.
And so
why did it change so drastically?
Because they were way over assessed.
So the 30.
Well, I can explain, but I need to hear you want to finish your question?
Quickly, yeah. So the $3,600 difference between the first year and the second year.
Yes.
Have they been reimbursed for that?
They have not.
And is that going to be part of the issues that you guys that is being considered currently?
I don't know that it's something we can correct.
That's why I was asking who sets the fees and who has that.
It would have to come back to you as a council to say, yes, we'd like to do that. It would have to be a separate item beyond this. And actually, to be perfectly honest, staff would recommend it because it was a miscalculation in the original set.
Maybe with interest and that kind of thing too. But and since we're put on a timetable here to approve Wildan by a certain amount, I mean, how quick of a process are we looking at?
Are we on a timetable? Like, that's my. Do we? What happens if we delay this so that you can get us the information?
If you delay it at all, it puts us within 2 days of when we have to have the information into the tax rolls. So we would prefer that you didn't delay, but refunding their money doesn't have anything to do with this. This is what we're talking about taxing for this year. So it would still be in the $1,200 range.
Next, can I make one statement?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Next year, or for any other of these districts, can we make that deadline not so close?
Sure.
So that if we have questions, there's time for you guys to bring us back the data.
I would say that's an excellent idea.
Okay.
So,
Now, wait, I'm sorry, I had one more. You had?
Yeah, I've got, one of the major complaints that I heard about the parks assessment was the 3.5% inflation rate every year, and we said, well, we'd only add it if it was necessary. But it appears that we are going to automatically add. What is the inflation rate this year?
Well, no, Jim, can you hear me too? This is Bard. Can you hear me, Jim?
I can hear you.
Okay. No, the way I understand it, this works, and am I close enough? You guys can hear me all right? It's 3.5% to the maximum. Okay, the maximum goes up, we recommend by 3.5% every year. What the actual billing every year is what is required to fund the district. So in other words, just because you suggest 3.5% be added to the maximum, it's not necessarily 3.5% that's added to the what's billed to the district. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but there's going to be a finite amount put on the tax bill.
That's correct.
And that 3.5% is built in.
No, that's
No?
not true.
No.
Then how do we
Hang on, let me make
determine
sure,
the amount of the tax bill then?
before I go any further. Jim, there's basically, when I look at a new one, there's two lines. There's a maximum amount line and what's actually going to be, what's in the fiscal year budget line. What's in the fiscal year budget line is what it costs us to fund the district. What's in the maximum line is actually what's the maximum we are allowed to charge. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So you would have to look at this one right now. All you're doing is recommending the 3.5% be added to the maximum. Jim, in the report, I don't remember at this point in time, does it show what the actual fiscal year budget for this particular, what all the districts are?
Yes, on page 35 of the report, if you go down to the area where it has district statistics, it'll show the number of parcels, the parcels to be levied, the total benefit units assigned to the parcels in the district. But more importantly, right below that, there is a levy per equivalent benefit unit that's applied, and then there's the maximum assessment rate per EB unit. If you look at most of them, well, matter of fact, if you look at all of them, the maximum assessment rate allowed is greater than what we're actually levying per benefit unit. Considerably more for, zone 1A, 1B, and 1C, and marginally different for zone 2 and zone 3. But in all cases, we're not levying at what's authorized to levy by the adjusted 3.5% each year.
I guess I should have brought my magnifying glass because I can't read this print.
So can I just make one more
comment?
comment?
Yeah, sometimes it's a little small. I apologize for that.
Councilperson Maurer mentioned that they shouldn't have to pay for the channel. They don't. All they're required to pay for is a portion of the lights and the landscaping that's along the channel, which benefits their property. They don't pay for maintenance of the channel or any of that.
Well, but that's my point. The landscaping along the channel, and of course we've had a real wet winter, but it appears to me that it hasn't been weeded.
It actually recently, Parks took care. Actually, I got told earlier today that they'd finished the section along China Lake. I haven't had a chance to check with Les yet, but our guys have been working on the Walmart area as well. We actually had it all taken care of last late summer, early fall, but then they got working on other things and it got left out.
Well, I guess that's one of my concerns. Is the Parks Department is spread real thin.
But Parks doesn't necessarily take care of this. It's Streets actually that takes care of the districts.
I know that, for example, along the median and downs, they worked on that here a few weeks ago, real well. But if you look at the medians on gone blank, I'm getting old.
Other medians are very weedy. But now those are not assessment districts.
I know that.
Those are a Parks item in most cases.
But Saturday I drove the Bowman Channel,
and the landscaping along the Bowman Channel
Needs help.
Negligent.
needs a lot of help. I guess my concern is, and I understand what you're saying about that, but I don't know that landscaping along the Bowman Channel benefits these properties to any degree.
Now, the original study that was done for these assessment districts says otherwise. But I can't comment other than that.
That's kind of a concern I had too, because of it being across the street, the entire street from the properties, and they're an undeveloped property. And
But
what
now-
proportional benefit, do they truly get? And it's on the other side of the fence, on the other side of the street that is gravelled, and so I have a little concern with that too, and how it's put forth.
Again, the original study said otherwise, but what's been done, because it's an undeveloped property, is it's been cut by 75% of what it was to, you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's considerably less than what it would be if they were fully developed properties.
Right. But they're not, though. I said, but they're not.
I'm sorry, I can't quite.
Oh, I said, but they're not, correct?
They're not fully developed. That's why
Right.
it's 75%, 25% of what it would be.
Yes.
Now, our action items tonight are basically setting a public hearing. So if we have any problems about adjusting fees and things like that, we can still do it even if we pass this tonight.
Right, remembering that the 3.5%, all right, is to the maximum. I can't tell you about specific ones, and I can certainly say more by the next time we meet. But and what we ask is that please remember that the maximum level ones need to be adjusted by the 3.5% every year, because what's going to happen is that many of you up there, as old as I am, you remember what it was like in the 70s when inflation was 8 to 16%, right? Well, all we can, unless we increase it 3.5% every time, when we hit a high inflation period, we're still not allowed to increase it by more than 3.5%, and it will have to come out of the city's coffers to take care of it if we don't have enough in the maximum to take care of it. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, yes. I still feel that some of these parcels I think it's unfair. But
Well,
that's
to
my
be
personal
perfectly
opinion.
honest, the three parcels that that you're talking about, one's assessed.
Are we talking about?
Well, I'm sorry,
We're talking about the Havens and the Hope.
The Havens,
Hope
three
ones.
parcels, okay?
Yeah.
And one has a $300, one has $300, and one has $500.
It's about $1,200.
It's $1,200.
It's about $1,200 total.
That's true.
And that's the same way with their next door neighbors.
Yeah. Well, not exactly, but really close.
Yeah, I know. They're close.
Can you address how these properties are compared? Perhaps it was in the way the assessment district was set up, but I understand there's a basic equivalency unit here. And can you address the difference between the properties and why one is assessed more differently than others? Because I've heard the Havens said they'd like to get it down to $200 a year.
Sure.
Could you address
this
that?
was discussed with them earlier. Again, they understand, but I'm not sure they agree. So let's make sure I make that very obvious, okay? They were comparing it to a piece of property up on China Lake that most of the property isn't in the district. A portion of the property is not in the district, but there's but a fairly small length of the property that actually touches China Lake. And the EBUs come off of what touches the roadway. So in other words, what touches China Lake, what touches Bowman, et cetera. Now, just so I get this in there, they have three properties, one sits behind. The question is, well, why is that included? The answer is because all three of them are there. They're all pretty much treated as the same. Whether it was, let's say the two front, it's a total of 1,200, and I don't know which, I'm assuming the two fronts are 3 and the back's 5, but what would happen is just if all we're looking at is the fronts, the two fronts would be 6, and it would still be $1,200.
But the ones in the back don't, to me, in my understanding of it, are not equivalent to the ones in the front.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay.
But what they did is they looked at it as an entire property and assessed it accordingly, okay? But what I was just saying is even if the back property was left off, the two front would then be 600 apiece as opposed to whatever they are at this moment. They would still be 1,200, whether it's divided over 3 or divided over 2.
I would like to be able to, before we come back to our hearing, our public hearing, that we have answered sufficiently both Mr. Hoagland and all the parties that have questions. I know that this is not the time where we can do that because their questions were just presented.
No, actually, like I said,
Can you? Then you can
we have
address their questions
sat
now?
with the Havens. We went through all of their questions.
Okay.
And again, they don't necessarily agree with the answers, and I will say that very strongly, okay? But basically all of their questions, I believe, were answered. If we've missed some, we can most certainly be happy to sit down with them again.
Okay.
Well, so here's a question, I'm a person who purchased a property 20 years ago before any of this was here, any of this lighting and landscaping district. So they buy a piece of property and they know that it's zoned commercial, right, when they bought it. So they have their contract and what they can do and what they can't do and what they're going to pay and so forth and so on. So in 2012, the new district comes in, I guess, and they start paying a fee on that property that they had not paid before, right? So they bought it in the 30s or 40s or 50s or whatever. All of a sudden, boom, so the contract that they agreed to begin with is just altered. I mean, they are assessed this new fee in 2012, yes?
The answer is yes and no.
Well, either they get the fee or they don't get it.
No, hang on. Let me finish. I would be more than happy to explain why I'm saying yes and no. There's Lauren and Jim both correct me if I'm wrong. The properties voted on this assessment. Is that not correct?
That's correct. Absolutely.
And they voted yes at the time, or they voted no, but there was more people in it that voted yes. I can't answer that.
All right, okay.
Well, so these people voted no, but
okay.
Okay, but so they voted. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so, but didn't you just tell me though that if a person owns a piece of land but they're not developing it, they're paying 25% of what someone who is developing it next door?
In this case, that's true.
Was that true across the board, pretty much?
I can tell you in this case that's true. I can't tell you all.
Yeah, in this case, these parcels were originally thought to be high-density residential. And and also thinking that they were going to be very imminent in their development. And later, Mr. Hoagland came to express his concerns with the assessments to find that an error had been made in the land use designation, and when it was actually zoned general commercial. And so for those reasons, the assessment was cut back to what it is now.
Which is, again, one of the reasons we're recommending that a refund be made between the second year and the...
All right, so he bought it with the understanding it was going to be high-use residential, and then he finds out later that it's actually...
No.
No?
They bought it. Maybe I understood what they said earlier, but they had it rezoned commercial, or they bought it zoned commercial? Okay, so they had it rezoned commercial, and we got it wrong. Okay, when we were working with the engineer that did the original study, we told them that it was high-density residential and that it was going to be soon to be developed, both which were incorrect.
Okay, well, that's fine, and we're gonna.
But that's why the assessment was higher originally.
Okay, so an individual thing, and we rectify it. That's great. We make a mistake, and then we rectify it. What I'm worried about, I just want to make sure that this thing protects is not just these three people, but I want to protect a person who bought a piece of property 30 years ago. And then out of the blue, they get a new bill, and then a new bill, and then a great big bill, and they're not developing anything. It's just right. That's not happening.
Okay, what would happen is if they were going to be drawn into a lighting and landscape
Mm-hmm.
district, they would have the information provided, they would get a chance to vote with the other people in the district to whether the district was to begin or not begin, and that you would proceed from there.
All right.
So
So
they would
this
not
only pertains to those that have already voted for this. They're within the district.
not voted for, voted on.
Voted on. But I mean, you said it passed originally.
Right,
So
but-
obviously we've had it. That's what I'm saying. We've had it. It was voted on by them. Fine. And now we have a couple of things. We've had an error. We're going to fix that.
Fix
what and then future development, if somebody bought a piece of land that is not part of this, and they had a piece of land for 30 years or before they get any bills, they're going to have to vote on it just like we voted on this.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, okay. That's what I need to understand. Okay. I just want to make sure nobody's, small mom and pop that have had this big piece of land and all this time just starts raking up bills and they're not developing. Right? Okay. That's fine.
Well, let's get back to the vote, though. The vote's a weighted vote, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
It is.
So
That's
you
why
got,
I
if you
said
got
that-
how many parcels you got in here, the Walmart parcel was the heaviest weight because it was built.
I would
Correct.
assume I wasn't here at the time, so I can't answer.
And you can see the weights.
So
of
everybody
those.
else could have voted no, but the Walmart parcel voted yes. That would be a 51% vote.
You can see the breakdown on the equivalent benefit units on that very last table. That'd be equivalent to the votes. That's what they would have in
With
the relation.
13
That's the
and-
weighting.
So if you go back to the page, sorry, I was showing him. Go back to the table that shows the breakdown of the EBUs for vacant land. It says the vacant land EBU is 0.5 per acre. It has the Havens and the Hoaglands has their EBUs as 385, 564, 387, 389, and 557. That doesn't seem like the correct EBU. on
That's
that.
actually the amount of the assessment, not the EBU, but
No,
maybe.
it says, no, it's the EBU listed in the, on that, the gray and blue
Okay.
thing.
Which page?
So first, the table that shows the calculations, let me scroll back, is on page 28.
Jim, you still there?
So that's that 28 is the page that shows the EBUs and how they're calculated per acre.
Luckily, I have my glasses.
Then if you go to the page that's the pages right after page 40, pages 1 and 2, the Havens and the Hoaglands EBUs are, like I just mentioned, in the 300s up to 560. Now, I don't think the acreage over there is the equivalent of 600 acres. Nowhere even close to that. And that would be 600. Go ahead, sorry.
The EBUs have nothing to do with the acreage. The EBUs are based on the front footage of the property in relationship to the square footage of landscaped area.
Then explain to me the
what
table.
happened-
Sorry, on the table on page 28, it says the benefit unit calculations, it's for vacant properties is 0.5 per acre. The minimum is 0.125 EBU, maximum 5 EBUs. So I'm just trying to understand the calculations.
When I was talking to them, I had that same, I couldn't figure it out. So if you could help me understand it, I would appreciate. Maybe you've helped them already. And I'm not criticizing, please understand. I'm trying to understand why, so when we're asked, we can make that. And it just didn't make any sense to me, so I figured there was something I did not know.
So you're on page 28 of the report. That's for zones 1B, 1B, and 1 and C. Has nothing to do with these guys. you have to go to page 29 of the report, which gives the breakdown of how zones 2 and 3 are calculated.
Why did we do
Based
it?
on their,
Why do we have two different?
because one's residential area and the other one is commercial. It's an entirely different situation. That's why they're broken up into different zones.
So even though they're vacant commercial, they're still being done the same rate as Walmart.
No. In this particular, the calculation is the same, but they're different for every parcel because they each have different front footage to the landscape improvement. They each have a different amount of landscaped area that's being maintained adjacent to their properties. And in this particular case, the methodology gave a discount of 50% to undeveloped properties. We have since then, because these properties aren't being developed actively, which was the original thought, we've discounted that even another 75%.
Oh, so it's only an 8.
So in reality, the two property owners in question that are concerned about their assessments, they're each only being assessed 4% of the total cost of maintenance.
What is their percentage on the if based on the land amount? Do you know that? I realize it's not figured that way, but can you explain that? If they pay 4% of the total assessment, what is their percentage of land use in that?
They're being, I guess I'm not understanding that particular question. They actually have almost 12% of the front footage, but only 4% of the cost.
Okay. You answered my
But for
question.
them, the acreage for them only applies in the fact that we've taken the front footage for the Mr. and Mrs. Haven. There are 3 properties. We've taken the front footage across their 2 properties that actually front East Bowman, which is about 659 linear feet. That's being apportioned to all 3 properties on an acreage basis, so that their frontage is being apportioned to all 3 of the properties, because the thought was originally that all 3 of those properties would develop as one single development when they developed.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. I understand it more fully now.
When did all of these get consolidated into one district?
Well,
They've pretty much always been consolidated into one district. We formed the first one in 2012. That was Zone 1. Then the others, as they came online, were formed as a separate district, but concurrently consolidated into this one. So you only had to take action on one district every year, rather than having, well, at this point would be 5 different engineers' reports and 5 separate districts.
Okay.
So you create a consolidated district with zones so you can address it all under one umbrella rather than multiple actions.
So when the vote occurred to become part of the district, explain to me how that was done. I'm trying to understand. Was Zone 3, were they just voted in together, or was it zones?
They were voted in together because it was a single annexation.
And so
Zone 2 and 3 were a single annexation, is that correct?
were zones 2 and
Yes.
3 done together, or was zones, okay. So
They were done
Walmart,
together because in reality they share all the improvements. When you go out there, they're all the same overall improvements that are being proportionally shared by all the properties. The truth is each one ends up having their own little piece of it, in the fact of the way the methodology is with front footage and landscape square footage. But it's collectively the entire lighting, landscaping. Zone 2 is assessed differently because they have some improvements that are not shared by the other properties in Zone 3. But theoretically, the improvements along South China Lake Boulevard, West Bowman Road, East Bowman Road, they're collectively all the same improvements and are shared by all of them.
Right. My only concern is that when the vote to establish this district was taken, why were these properties lumped in with that area when they weren't changing their use at all?
Because, again, one, they have improvements in front of their property, which they're benefiting from. All the improvements that are out there that are being maintained by the district directly benefit these properties. Maybe at the moment you don't see that because they're undeveloped, but I guarantee you that these properties long-term have a greater benefit and ability to develop. The value of the properties increase because of these improvements.
Okay, is there any other questions from council? Did you want to address, or anyone else? I'm not limiting to
I'm Nikki Haven, one of the owners of the property you've been discussing. I've passed out to you basically our concerns. The city believes that we derive benefit from this. We don't agree with that. We've recently listed our property with a real estate agent, and our property value has not gone up since we've become part of this district. In fact, it has gone down. There is another parcel that pays a lot less, and yes, they have a smaller frontage on China Lake Boulevard, but their property is kind of pie-shaped. So they have a large area, and they pay $136 compared to our $1,200. And that just didn't seem quite right. And they're on the corner of College Heights and China Lake, right there with the stoplight and everything. We believe we are owed a refund from the city for our $3,600 for the error from the first year, and Mr. Culp has admitted that there was a mistake made. And we thought that the back parcels should be eliminated, but then they just changed the assessment to the other two. We did vote no when we had the vote, but I can't explain how it was done, but the weighting made our votes, it meant nothing, basically, because we were outweighed on other properties. So
that is the normal way most are done. Is that correct? Is there a formula for that?
It's always the way it's done.
That's what
and
I
it's
thought.
Generally by parcel, but it could be size of parcel. It could be any number of things.
Right.
But in most cases, when it's done like on residential, it's done at the beginning of the development, and there's only one vote by the developer before any houses are there. So, but in this case, it was added up.
Afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you have documentation? You said that the value of your property has gone down. Do you have documentation on that?
Not with me.
But you did get your properties assessed before and after? Is that what you're saying? No.
The short answer is no, didn't get appraised because the appraiser that rate is about
Rick, I didn't hear the
Oh, we tried to have it appraised, but then we found out the appraiser was kind of working with a real estate agent, and it wasn't a fair appraisal. But we're talking about what the property was valued at. We did sell a portion of the property, a different, back further, that was on Dolphin, I believe, and then that, we got rid of that part, and just based on what we got for that parcel and what we can get for these parcels now, it's gone down.
Okay. But that parcel was of lesser value back, is that correct?
Well, the ones that we sold previously were going to be for housing.
Right.
But a housing
changed
tract.
The zoning, yeah.
But, well, it was zoned for that, for residential.
Mm-hmm.
And then the part we're talking about now is commercial.
Right.
So what we got for the residential was a lot more than what we can get for the commercial now.
Okay.
So.
Did you have any other things you wanted to say? Because I see you would like to have those parcels deleted. Would you?
Well,
the reason we want that, because we need to have that. Just giving us this doesn't put it on the video.
Okay. Well, we thought deleting the back parcels, the numbers 343, 35103, and 343, 35108. That's the Hoagland's parcel. Ours is the 03. We thought having them removed as part of this district would lower our bill.
But you want it removed because you want the bill lower, even though you were in the district and it was approved. You do understand that the vote was approved.
Yes, yeah, we know.
And so you just want to secede from the district,
Can we delete parcels from the district?
Part of what the actual question on this one is since it's based on the frontage of the properties, why is this one included at all? The answer that Jim gave, I believe already, is that what they did was they looked at all three parcels and divided it accordingly over the three. If you were to eliminate the back parcel, all that would do would be to bring the same assessment to the front two parcels. The back parcel doesn't contribute other than the fact that it's divided out that way. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
These assessments were based on front footage, is that correct?
They are.
Was the same front footage assessment based on China Lake Boulevard and East Bowman?
I can't answer that. Jim, did you hear the question?
I heard the question, yes. Well, it's not exactly all front footage. It's a combination of the square footage of landscaping along the front footage. So it's a calculation of the two combined. So yes, it's applied the same across the board. That's why Walmart has so much more. They have a lot more landscaping, a lot more front footage than the rest. And so they have a greater charge.
So they do have a lot more landscape, and so that proportionality between what they have for the amount of landscape that they have versus what the Hoaglands and the Havens have for their landscape, is that weighted appropriately too, as far as the percentages?
Yes. I mean, again, going back, I had indicated before that the Havens property is being assessed this year about 4% of the total cost. Walmart's paying 72% of the cost.
But they have real curb and gutter and landscape and lights, and they have a lot more.
Curb and gutter's
not curb and gutter. Scratch that. But you know what I'm saying, though. But they have a lot more landscape than a ditch across the street with some gravel and a chain link fence in front of it and 3 light poles. One of
But
them.
they pay for that. They pay for that same thing on their property as well.
Right.
So I guess.
Right, but
What-
that property is generating income where this property isn't.
Why were, so back up for a second, because these 6 parcels, why wouldn't they be added into a landscape lighting district like other parcels are when they're developed?
Because their improvements were already installed, which means they don't have to install them.
But they didn't ask for those improvements.
Exactly.
But the vote was weighted so heavily against them that their vote didn't even matter, is what they're saying. They didn't ask for the improvements. The vote was weighted against them. And when they developed their parcels, then they would be lumped into a lighting and landscaping district, because the assumption is curbing, more landscaping, sidewalks and things would be added for their development. So it does seem a little unfair that some of these properties just got lumped in when Walmart developed.
So was the intent to do that to pay for the
At the
ditch?
time, it was anticipated that these areas would be developing shortly thereafter as well.
Did they say that?
And that's why we made the reduction. You can, as a council, you certainly have the ability to reduce their assessment to 0 if you want.
Okay.
But then the amount that you reduce their assessment by cannot be respread to the other properties. The city would have to make up the difference.
But at this point in time, we're using our own staff to maintain the district?
No, when we put it out to bid, the bids came back too high. And so while we're waiting to put it back out to bid again in hopes to get a more reasonable cost for the property owners, the city staff is doing it on overtime basis on weekends to be able to get everything caught back up.
How much money? So
Ron, is that in Zone 3 or Zone 2 or?
That's the whole assessment.
The whole district? I mean,
yeah, the whole district, yes. Up College Heights Boulevard to Walmart. So city staff has been working overtime on the weekends. That's not good. Ultimately, as the district grows, it would be cheaper to hire city staff to take care of it instead of paying the prevailing wage. Eventually, when the district gets that big, we might be able to do it at a lot cheaper cost. We do want to put it back out to bid again to see if we can get a better cost to save the folks money over time. But right now, until we do, we're working on it overtime, which is actually a cheaper rate.
And city staff is, the city's being reimbursed by the assessment district for the city's.
Correct. Overall, it's cheaper for the city to do it, even on overtime, but your issue is staff burnout. One of the problems we're also having is that, Public Works Streets borrowed a couple of parks people for the road project to get that thing moving. So there's a yin and a yang to everything.
Yeah, that's why I say we got our staff spread pretty thin.
Well, one of the things we did after we only had one bid the last time, and it was seriously, ridiculously high, we asked, and a lot of them didn't want to do the prevailing wage paperwork. So we will spend more time educating before we put it out again, but that was the problem part of the problem last time.
Mrs. Haven, do you have any more comments you would like to make?
No, I'm finished.
Okay. All right. I'm going to continue to ask the public to come up, and then it'll come back to council.
Madam Mayor, what we can do is we can obviously take a look at, obviously, if we need to rebate some money to the Hoaglands and the Havens, we will absolutely do so. That will obviously reduce the reserve fund, but if it needs to be done, we'll do it. And then obviously we can take a look at what their actual rates are. The issue is that, Mr. McGuire is correct. If we, take that 4% and not charge them that amount, then the city has to pick up that portion of the tab. Now, if we can get this done at a cheaper rate, if we can get a contractor that will do it at a reasonable rate, then obviously the assessments, will reduce over time after we have a, sufficient fund to be able to address the cash flow as well as any sort of incidentals that come up.
Yeah, I don't want this money to come out of our general fund.
Yeah.
I think that is unfair to the rest of the public, but equally I want to make sure it's fair to the people we have, and I know that wasn't our intent to do that, to make it unfair.
We do too. That's one of the reasons why we didn't accept the bid, because we felt it was high. And we may be wrong. That may just be what the cost to be able to maintain that is, if we can't find anybody cheaper. But just remember that if we do not have these districts, then the city has to find either the money to pay contractors or to hire additional staff to do this.
Okay. The 3,600, is that just for your all's property, or is that for the total amount for both?
No, that's each. That's each.
3,600 each. Okay.
Stan?
Good evening again, Stan Rotora. Walmart was required as part of their tract development to approve a landscape lighting district. I mean, that's just part of the development. They were required, anybody that got thrown in with them is obviously good. It's in a lose-lose situation. I appreciate, by the way, Councilman Stevens' insightful questions. The properties had no reason to be in that particular district to begin with. They should have been added when they were developed, like everything else that has been done in our city. I don't know how it happened, but it wouldn't appear that those first 6 properties had any input into the landscape design or the lighting design. They weren't part of the Walmart development. The question really ought to be is, why are they in there at all? And if they shouldn't have been in there at all, why are they paying anything at all? It just doesn't seem reasonable that you could take property that's not part of development and force a landscape lighting district on somebody when they had absolutely no chance to vote no or meaningful vote no. It just doesn't seem reasonable or logical, and if the city has to eat it, then frankly the city should eat it, because it shouldn't be their responsibility, either any of those 6. As far as I can't see any logical reason how they were included in that district, unless somebody else has some good reason for it. It doesn't sound like it was appropriate to begin with.
Well, this was formed before this council, so we're not saying woulda, shoulda, coulda. What we're saying is, how do we fix it?
It was formed in 16.
Assessment.
The assessment district for this part was formed in 16. Isn't that right?
Yes.
12.
Well, the parent was
the original.
Formed in 12.
The original was formed in 12. This was formed in 16.
Okay, because I do remember asking when they rolled it down, asking, is this $1,800 acceptable? And Mr. Hoagland, in fact, you pointed out to me, Mr. Hoagland said, yes, that's much better than the 4,800.
Well, yeah.
3,600.
That's really not the issue. The question, pardon.
I think this was developed. This district was developed in a committee that was set up for the Bowman Road area, and I think the reason they included certain properties was because the improvements that Walmart put in, which were required of theirs, exceeded down there. Because remember, Walmart did the channel all the way down to Sunland, or pretty much that way, and so so the properties that had lighting and landscaping put on them or by them were thrown into the district. Now,
but they have front footage with landscape, and it was pointed out they didn't ask for that landscape.
That's what I'm saying. I'm answering your question as why it was included. I think this is the reason it was. I wasn't on the committee.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm not trying to blame what was done back then. What I'm saying is it should be made right now. They were not given a choice whether or not they wanted to be put in that landscape lighting district. They didn't have a choice.
Well, they had a choice, but their vote was mute.
It was a futile
They
vote,
got the vote,
as you
but it's a
pointed
futile-
out
futile
earlier,
vote,
and that
yes.
was very insightful as well. So typically, the only landscape lighting districts we've ever initiated was for a development within that development. This is not part of that development, and it seems to me that we took a few liberties in what we did. I don't see why they were included. You know, the fact that they put some landscape in front of their property, you know, that was something the city wanted to do, not the developer wanted to do, or the non-developer in this particular case.
I agree.
So,
now, we're told that we can adjust their assessment to what we want.
Yeah, that's what my question was going to be.
But then we have to make up the difference. So they're being assessed $1,200. They're willing to pay $2.
Is that $200 per parcel?
No, that's total. That's total. They want to pay $2.
For all 3 of your parcels or 6 parcels?
Just their 3. So it'd be $200 each. The Hoaglands and the Havens would each pay $200. That's what they're proposing. So that's $2,000 less going into the assessment district than the $1,200 that's proposed.
Can I ask one
to
question?
To me, $2,000 of city funds. I mean, I'm not saying $2,000 isn't a lot of money, but considering the situation, I think we could probably find $2,000.
Let me ask you this: when they sell their property, okay, it's obvious that property has gone up in value dramatically right next to Walmart. So their payday will be when they sell that property, and they will benefit tremendously. My question is this: when they sell their property, what happens to this assessment? I would hope that it would not be at any kind of a super low rate deal that we end up orchestrating, because when they sell that property, there's going to be significant profits. So what happens when they sell their property?
If I would say that it's not necessarily going to change immediately, but what I would suggest is that you recommend that when it's developed, that the assessment's brought back to what it should be.
Oh, definitely.
Well,
Isn't it regenerating income?
No, but I would say that not only if it's developed, if the property is sold, the new owner pays the full pop of what, because you're buying this property obviously right by Walmart and are taking advantage. You know, you see what I'm saying? It's not just if they develop it. I say that when they sell it, the full thing is paid. However, and then whether or not we do something in the interim, you know, it's kind of like.
Mr. Martin, their land use would change. It would go, if it's multifamily, it would then go into the multifamily EBU instead of the vacant property. So the assessment would go up. That would then be spread across all of the assessments, and more than likely Walmart would go down. It would equalize a little bit. But yes, the land use would change if they sold and it actually developed.
Automatically, we don't need to add something in that says that.
It's already in the assessment. It's already in the district that if that land becomes developed, the assessment, the EBU is already set on that area, so it would go up.
And we don't have to. We could still leave the maximum the same, right?
Correct.
If we voted to only charge them a lesser fee, we could still leave the 3.5% a year and the maximum on that property.
The city council could very easily decide tonight.
We do this every year.
Yeah, the city council. This is no different. City council can set it at 0. They could set it at 200, or they could set it at the EBU that the consultant had recommended. That is your choice. So if you decide to do 200 per or 200 for the parcel blocks, that would be more than acceptable.
But if we do 0 for 3 years, then they would be getting their credit.
That could be a way of paying it back also. I mean, we'd have to take a look and make sure that refund was appropriate.
I would suggest that the credit be refunded, and I wouldn't suggest that it comes out of the general fund. I would suggest we look to make sure that it can come out of the reserves.
No, it comes out of the reserves, yes.
Well,
That
somebody
money
had
did-
said the
Yeah, that
general
money didn't
fund.
come out of the general fund.
Yes.
Right. Or it didn't go into the general fund, it went into the reserve.
You just said the words, if it's developed. My question is not if it's developed. I want to separate this. If they sell their property, period,
Well, then
developed or not, if they sell the property, I think that the full pop should go at that time. I don't think somebody should have a benefit up front and then have a benefit when they make a huge profit because the whole thing is developed because of Walmart and the new buyer who comes in gets a reduced rate.
Mr. Martin, if they sold that land as vacant land, the next year the city council could decide to charge the maximum EBU, which I believe right now would be 97 cents an EBU.
Well, why can't we decide that tonight? Why does it always have to be down?
You can decide it now. I mean,
that's the issue is tonight. I mean, we're voting.
The issue tonight is if you choose to just make it $200 and pick whatever cent value that's going to be, we can do that. If they sell the property the next following year, you can charge the maximum EBU for that property because you're going to go from, let's say, 94 cents this year down to maybe, I don't know, 8 cents, 9 cents. And so you just, if they sold the property, you could raise it up. You can make that assessment every year.
Yep.
Or that judgment call
We're
every
looking
year.
at this every year. This
Yeah, you look at it every year.
Every year.
The only thing I think, if they sell it to somebody, how do you account, and I'm not trying to keep your liability less, but you're going to have to disclose that it's not going to be $200 a year. That's why I kind of like Wallace's saying, if it's sold, this is what it is right up front. And
Right.
so
Why
the
are we going to
buyer
wait for a
knows.
meeting and
Well, you could just say, if it's sold, you charge the maximum EBU for
Yeah.
vacant property.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's
I
part
say.
of the-
I would like to see that in whatever we decide to vote on tonight.
Yeah.
The only
We're
problem I
only
see,
voting on the hearing.
the only problem I see with that is that if it's still undeveloped, say if they sold it next year and it's still undeveloped, now you have the exact same issue. You have somebody who has undeveloped property with the exact same parameters that the Havens have, and you are not delivering a fair and even consistent, fix to this. So I mean, I think it's because it's undeveloped. It sits across the street. If we make a change and lower the fee, that it's irrelevant whether the land sells. It's the developed part. Once it becomes moved into, we're developing it, now it opens it up into the full meal deal there on the assessments, that are currently set in that district. So that's the only problem I see, is that we have to have consistency. That's one of the issues I think we deal with in the city, is that we have inconsistencies in the way we deal with permits or fees, or at least this gives us that stability. It's the same for them as it would be for the next person under those same parameters. So, not to add more fuel to the fire.
But if we did them all the same, that it was when it's sold, this is what would happen. Whether we do it now when it's sold or after it's developed, it's still the same thing, except when.
Not if you're.
Am I understanding?
Well,
Misunderstanding?
and the concern I have about just doing 200 total for the one set of 3 parcels and the 200 total for the other set of the 3 parcels is, I don't think that's us being consistent. Because technically they could sell off each one of those parcels individually. So to me, it seems like we need to be doing an amount for each of those parcels.
Well, you take that money and spread it at each parcel. I agree.
But I think maybe it should be a little bit more than 200, just because if you look at the size on the map of those parcels, the 136, that's one parcel over there on the corner. And this is a larger land area. And so I think a significantly larger if you add up all 3 of those parcels. So to me, I'm willing to reduce the amount, but I think we also do need to recognize, because they could sell these properties, and we don't want to say that we're dropping it down and then as soon as someone else buys it, looks like we're playing favorites, and I don't like the way that looks. But I do think it should be reduced, definitely, and I do want to have us put on to give them a refund.
We all agree with it.
Do you want staff to come back in 2 weeks with that number
Yeah.
for the vacant property?
count the number for the vacant property, if you're looking at it within this, is what's in the report. If council wants to choose a different number, I would suggest that if you're going to pick 200, that you drop off the back properties since they don't have any face, and you charge each of the front properties 100. If you want to make it 200. If you want to make it 400, charge the front two properties 200 apiece.
But the reason the 200 was so they could collect their refunds.
No.
If we're going to do that and refund it.
I do not believe that that's what they were asking. They were asking.
They want to have a refund, and they want to be assessed 200 from here on out.
Is that correct?
That's what I understand.
Okay, they're nodding yes. Okay, thank you.
I think David is waiting to make a comment.
I know. Okay. Dave, go ahead and speak.
Well, thank you. First of all, Stan Rottori brought up something just before me that I think is valid, and I kind of second his thoughts on that. It became earlier in the discussion here, it became aware to me that I was confused, just like you people. I was not sure whether or not we were discussing one district or two districts. Now, I heard something in the discussion that I think kind of clarified that a little bit. But these were originally two districts that have been combined into one hearing. Is that correct? Am I looking at this right?
It's one district.
It's all one district.
Let me finish. But we got the zones.
Well, what is the zone? I mean, I never heard of the zones before. Maybe
The first zone was the subdivision up the Horton tract up on College Heights.
Yeah, I've been aware of that for years.
And then the second and third zones are around the Walmart area that were added in 16 when Walmart opened.
All right. Well, I think there's where the error come or where the mistake came from here. I don't think there are two different types of districts, so I don't know why you ended up combining them or something like you have or whatever.
That I can answer. The reason they're combined is so that it's one report, and we pay the engineers one time to create it, and the council only has to approve one report. If you read within the report, all three districts are broken out separately by parcels, etc. So it's basically a convenience to have it combined into one super district for the report.
So you mentioned three. I haven't even heard anything about the third one tonight. I don't think. I don't know.
The Walmart area is broken up into 2 and 3.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that brings up my other question here that I had. How many lighting and landscape districts do we have in the entire city?
5.
Zone 1, Zone 1B, Zone 1C, Zone 2, and Zone 3. So far, under this consolidated report. We will have annexations for...
Was that 4 or 3?
5.
Where are the other two? Why aren't we discussing
Zone 1
those?
is up the D.R. Horton tract. Zone 1B is the new tract directly to the north of D.R. Horton that's being constructed right now. And Zone 1C is the vacant graded parcels that are on the corner of Springer and College Heights.
Are those going to have their own hearing or public?
No, we're hearing them now. They're all a part of this consolidation.
Yes. Okay, so now see, that was not clear to me. Okay.
It's in the report, Dave.
Well, I don't have all that data.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I had one other question now. What the heck was it? Oh, yeah. So tonight you're supposed to be setting a date for the public hearing.
That's correct.
Will only the property owners in the landscaping districts have be able to comment during that public hearing, or does will the general public have a comment time?
You're talking now,
Oh, well, yeah, but this is not the public hearing.
but anybody can talk.
Okay. Thank you. Good luck.
Where we are right now is we are voting whether to,
Yeah.
not whether, to approve the public hearing and for the next agenda.
Yeah.
So there's multiple
There's-
votes
there's-
there.
I know,
Yeah,
and I'm
there's
just
three
going to say we've got
resolutions.
those three things.
So
we-
we can set, we don't want to necessarily set the fees tonight. We can set those fees
That's
at
right.
public hearing. Is that correct? Isn't that the proper time to do it?
Yes, yeah. But it's important that you had this discussion tonight to know where you want to go.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Can I ask Jim real quick? Jim, this is Rika. Real quick question. One of the things that we're going to do in this resolution is approve the preliminary report. And they're wanting to change the fees of what are being assessed. But approving the preliminary report, those fees are listed in there. So how does that work?
They approve the report as modified by council direction. So what we need tonight is for the council to give us some direction as to, do we want to assess the three parcels $200, $300? And then my recommendation would be to set what you want to levy them as an assessment going forward, and just stipulate that any changes to the property in ownership or development status changes those assessments in future years.
Wouldn't we need to also add, Jim, that we're going to, out of reserves, refund whatever the exact amount, but 3,600-ish to each of the two property owners?
Yeah, if that's council's desire to include that, we can certainly do that. Or you can do that at the public hearing if that's what you want to do. That one, is.
Let's not muddy it.
What I need more than anything else right now
should be a
is
separate
direction on
agenda
how
item.
the council wants to proceed for this fiscal year.
So what's the direction here?
What happens if word gets out that we're changing the dollar amounts on these, and at the public hearing we have 10 more parcel owners show up wanting theirs reduced? How do you address that?
Well, that's pretty easy because this is somewhat of a different situation than normal. This is not, the other assessments are all involving residential tracts as they're developing. There's nothing about them that makes them different. This one happened to be a case where we were anticipating these properties being developed right along with Walmart, and it didn't happen. So we're making an adjustment to be fair to all property owners, but still keep the district whole. So.
Okay, and so there are a few other parcels that aren't residential that are south of the Walmart property, too.
Only a couple of them,
Right, like 3 maybe.
and they're already cheap.
Okay.
The only ones that are in the district are those 6 parcels, right?
No.
No.
The 6 and 1 other parcel is vacant, which has a small assessment now.
Yeah, but those are on the other side of the street.
Okay. Okay.
That's the
And
same
those are
here. That's the
developed
same here.
largely.
So her point is they might come and ask, but that one's already lower, so. We'll deal with it. Okay, let's see.
We need some direction from staff how we can make this happen.
I know
and
how to,
still.
I got it all down here, I think.
You got it?
I think.
Okay.
Approve 3.
You have to
Okay,
do
so
it.
number 1, initiate the proceedings. Number 2.
So correct me, Jim, here, they can initiate the proceedings and approve that resolution as is, and then we can go to the second one and approve it with the modifications, and then we can go to the third one, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you can just approve, motion the first one.
I move approval of the first
Initiate
item.
proceedings.
Initiate the proceedings.
Second.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Does he
Okay,
have
he's going to put
3
the vote up in
different
just
votes?
1 second.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, the second item, I move preliminary approval of the annual engineer's report with the modification of each of these 4 parcels along Bowman Road be $100 each, and the 2 behind them be 0 for this year. Do you want me to say, and to be reviewed upon sale of the property? I don't necessarily need to have that myself.
No, I think every year we have to review this anyway. So if next year,
we do it every year. So.
Right, next year we can review it and each year thereafter.
So $100 per parcel, the 4 parcels Bowman Road, and 0 for the 2 parcels behind those 4 parcels.
I would sure. Okay, that.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Proposing that as is. I just sure would love to see that we don't have to revisit it, that on the sale of the property, it goes to the full thing, and then we don't have to worry about it, think about it.
We have to review it every year.
We renew these every year.
It has to come before us every year, or before the then sitting council every year.
I know.
And we will know if it's sold because it'll have a different name.
And the point is that you can only change it once a year. So if they sell the property 3 months from now, it's not going to change for 9 months down the road because we only do this once a year.
Yeah.
So it doesn't automatically change when the property sells. It changes during the next review period.
Or if they develop it.
No.
Right?
No, even if they develop it, it doesn't change till the next review period. That's just the way the law is and the way it's structured.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
We do. I'm going to have to do a roll call vote.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah. Mayor Breeden?
Aye.
Ms. Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Heyman?
Aye.
Mr. Maurer?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
And let's see, the third one is declare its intent to levy and set the date, public hearing. Okay, I make a motion to declare it and to the intent to levy and set the date of the public hearing for May. I'm getting yours though.
I'm sorry,
Peggy. May 15th, 2019 for fiscal year 2019/2020 as described in the report and modified.
I don't believe this one was modified.
Oh, okay.
Well,
This
because
one
it says
is
as described in the report.
Described in the report.
Oh, okay.
As
So it says levy and,
modified.
yeah, so I think we need to modify this one.
Okay. Thank you. So we need a second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mayor Breeden?
Aye.
Ms. Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Heyman?
Aye.
Mr. Maurer?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, we are on item 11. Initial action by the City Council regarding the annual assessments for the Drainage Benefit Assessment District 206-1 and adoption of the resolution number 1 initiating proceedings, preliminary approval of the engineer's report, 3 declaring the city's intention to levy the annual assessment and setting the date of the public hearing. Sir.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, council members, this is almost a carbon copy of what we went through. Only difference is this deals with drainage improvements relative to the Horton tract and Stephen Harris tracts up along College Heights. The drainage benefits in that area include the sump that's located at it's a park and a sump that's going to be located at the corner of Springer and College Heights. It also includes the pipelines that feed into the sump, the storm drains, I should say, and any of the appurtenances to operate a storm drain or a flood control facility. This item, again, is prescribed. This item and your actions are prescribed by law, and what we are doing is this annual assessment report. So the first thing on your item is to initiate the proceedings. The second item is to preliminarily approve the engineer's report, and the third item of resolution is declaring the city's intent to levy annual assessments and setting the date of the public hearing. And again, Mr. McGuire is here and available for any detailed explanation of the report or any questions you may have.
Are there questions from council?
I wore myself out of the last one, so I'm going to be quiet.
Any questions from council other than Mike? Okay. Scott, you had none? Okay, Mike, your questions?
No, I don't have any.
Oh, I thought you said you wanted to be last. I'm
No,
sorry.
I wanted to be
Okay.
quiet.
Okay. So there are no questions from council, I'm assuming. Okay. Is there any questions from the public? Okay. Motion?
I make a motion to initiate the proceedings.
Second?
Please vote.
Wallace is second.
Press the button.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, the next item. Motion?
So moved. Initial action regarding the annual assessment for the Drainage Benefit Assessment District 2016-1 and adoption of the resolution preliminary approval of the engineer's report.
But we didn't do number 2 yet, did we?
That's the one she's doing, the engineer's report.
Yeah. Okay, is there a second on that?
Second?
Roll call vote. Ms. Breeden?
Oh, well,
He's got it up there. Oh, okay, go. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, motion on the next item.
I move to the initial action by City Council regarding the annual assessment for the Drainage Benefit Assessment District 2016-1 and the adoption of Resolution 3 declaring the city's intention to levy the annual assessments and setting the date of the public hearing.
For May 15th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay. The next item. Mayor Breeden, with concurrence of the council, will appoint replacement members to the Planning Commission. Mrs. Sherwin?
I have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission right now.
No.
Let me rephrase that. I have 1 vacancy on the Planning Commission right now. Mr. Heyman's appointment has resigned. Mr. Derek Mackey has resigned. Ms. Stevens' appointment, Jessica DeHaan, will be moving in the next few months and can't make the next meeting or so. So we were hoping to get an appointment put forward on that also so that we could have a quorum. So it's on the agenda tonight for appointment if you guys have somebody, and move forward from there.
Okay, does those people who appointed, those members who appointed a person who either is not going to be or will in the future not be on the commission, have anybody that you would like to nominate?
Not at this time, but we are working on it.
Okay. I have a citizen service application with me now. I'll give it to you for your nominee. Same for you, Ms. Stevens. I did email it to you earlier today, too, if you want to not take the hard copy. But the only thing I do ask is that at the next meeting, we come forward with one if possible, because we do have a conflict at the Planning Commission meeting at the end of the month. If we don't get somebody nominated on the May 15th meeting, we'll have an issue and not be able to hold the Planning Commission meeting at the end of this month, because we won't have a quorum.
Okay, I want to reiterate, I want to see the applications before we vote, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I second that, and I need a little more time to think about it.
Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to make one today. I didn't know that I was included on that one. So
I'll just move it forward to the 15th, the whole
Right.
item. Okay.
Okay, so no action on that item. All right, so we will come to discussion and choose a date for upcoming budget hearings.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. We'd like to start establishing some dates. One, for the Finance Committee to see the initial review of the budget and then the budget hearings. What staff is considering is we would normally have the Finance Committee meeting on May 20th. We're recommending, if the council members that are on that committee, to move it to May 14th and then have the budget hearing scheduled for Thursday, May 30th at 5 o'clock, with a possible follow-up day the next day if necessary during the day to be able to go through the budget hearings. So I guess I'd first like to be able to ask the members of the Finance Committee would be okay if we moved the meeting to the 20th or to the 14th from the 20th. And what that does is just give staff time to be able to make any adjustments to the budget that may be recommended at that time.
You mean making it the 14th of May, moving it backwards?
Moving it backwards, moving it.
And that gives you more time.
From the 20th to the 14th of May, if that'd be acceptable.
So the 14th of May is the regular night for city org, but we're not going to hold a city org meeting that night. If we need to hold a special one, we will. But at this point right now, there's nothing on the agenda that I'm aware of.
Can I suggest that?
Can I ask a question? Dave, can you answer about that meeting on the 14th is not going to take place, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then I have no problem with that. Anybody else?
That's you too. So Tuesday the 14th at same time?
5 o'clock.
Yes, 5 o'clock.
For the Finance Committee.
I'm good.
Okay.
And then the budget hearings, we're recommending Thursday, May 30th at 5 o'clock to give the public an opportunity to participate.
Could we do the 29th, or is there the Wednesday, since it's the 5th Wednesday, is there?
29th would be fine.
That's better for me, thank you.
So that's a Wednesday.
Actually, we were moving it up from the 29th because we thought that was your publisher day for the swap sheet, so we moved it up.
It is, but I'll be done by 5.
Okay.
Yeah, 29th is fine. I don't think
Okay.
staff has conflict with that at all.
Are we doing 5 or 6? Normally we do council meetings at 6.
Whichever time council wishes.
I like the later date, but
You like
Later
6?
time or later date?
later time. So
6 o'clock?
6?
Keep in mind, these meetings are generally 3 to 4 hours or more for budget hearings.
5:30 would be fine. I mean,
Let's do it 5:30 is good.
gives me a little bit more time.
But
to
you're
get
right,
out the
these
door.
can go
Yeah,
on forever.
these could go on.
And
So
then we could,
5:30 on
And
the
then the
29th?
backup date be the 30th?
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
We-
we're not doing it on a day that City Hall's usually closed during the day.
Correct. What we could do is if we don't get it done on the 29th, we could just continue the meeting to the evening of the 30th.
Yeah. At 5:30.
Correct, or whatever time council wishes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, then we will, we've done through, so let's talk then about committee reports. City org,
Did meet.
finance.
Have not met.
And would you change so that reflects the new membership? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Infrastructure?
Yes, we met last Thursday. I think it was last Thursday. We had one major item on there, and it was concerning city streetlights. We had a presentation from Edison Company. I think in the past we didn't do this because there was upfront cost to do it, but we are asking staff to put this on the agenda for the next meeting to vote to have Edison Company change out all the streetlights throughout the city to LED. It will save us, I think it was $14,000 a year starting next year for 20 years because they'll front the cost of replacing all the streetlights, but they amortize it over 20 years. So after 20 years, it goes to, is that 62 or 42? You're right, 42. After 20 years, it goes to a savings of $42,000 a year. So they'll actually go through all the street lights in the city and replace them with LEDs. So asking that to be put on the city council meeting, next meeting, so we can vote on it.
Is SE going to be here for that?
No, I think we'll just present the information. Is that
Okay.
right, Lauren?
Correct, yes, we would ask Southern California Edison to be here.
You will ask him to be here?
Well, we can, but
He
I
gave us
I don't
a
think
really,
it's necessary. It's
He gave us a really, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that meeting I was at, but I didn't speak. Go ahead, sorry.
So, I think we have enough information. We can present it. Staff even suggested we just go ahead and do it, but I wanted to bring it to council for a couple reasons. Number one, an example that the staff said was like you review the bill and you make some changes on the bill. That's not visible. If all of a sudden we have SE trucks going through town, working on every street light in town, that's pretty visible, and I think the public ought to know what's going on. So I think it should be a city council item.
And it's a 20-year commitment.
It's a 20-year commitment. That's correct.
Mr. Maurer, do we have to enter a contract on that, or is that just part of our bill?
No, it's a contract.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to. And by the way, there's a 9 or 10 month delay. They're backlogged, so once we approve it, it probably won't happen until December or January when they start going through.
Do we need to give more time for our attorney to look over the contract? I mean,
When would we get the contract, Lauren?
yeah.
Not until we approve it. Approve the action. I think we approve the action pending the city attorney reviewing the contract.
I'll have staff work on it, and we'll either have it on the 15th or the first meeting in June.
And I'd like staff to maybe make sure that there's no downsides to that contract, that if we could, because we didn't really get the opportunity to really look at that yet and see if there's any other cities that maybe decided not to do it and why they decided not to do it. I think would be good to know.
Well, I think a lot of cities have decided to do it because that's why they're so backlogged.
Right.
Yeah.
What, does this have to go out for bid?
No, Edison does it.
Huh?
Edison does it themselves.
Oh, this is Edison. This is an Edison proposal. I'm sorry, I
they
didn't
do
hear
it
that.
to their own light poles
Yeah,
that they own.
Oh,
But we get to be in a 20-year.
and what? Silly question. Other than federal mandates up to 15 or 20% or something, why would Edison do such a thing?
To save themselves money.
It saves it in the long run. It saves, number one, they're kind of mandated to.
So it's a federal mandate to have
Well,
it.
it's not a federal mandate. The state is looking at mandating. The state has already mandated residential has to be LEDs. So 90-some percent of the lights in a new home.
Pretty much a state mandate.
So
I'm answering my own question.
it's heading that direction.
Yeah, well,
The
it's
state
like
has-
the solar thing. They don't want to do solar, Mike. Give me a break. So they have to do solar. So this is a state mandate, and it's their program, and they're going to switch the lights.
Yes.
So to us, and there's no cost up front to do
No
it?
upfront cost to us, just a savings down the road.
It's hard to believe, huh?
Well, I don't believe it, but okay. The only reason I believe it is because it's a state mandate. Other than that, I believe nothing.
Well, I would just want the gentleman from SCE who came is also his second job as mayor of Covina, and he spent a long time explaining to that. Maybe he explained to me beforehand because I was sitting there and talked about the huge benefits Covina got from it.
But he, in all fairness to him, he abstained on the vote.
Right. He said he left the building.
Well, okay. The only question, I'm just playing the devil's advocate a little bit because it doesn't make any sense to me other than the mandate. The second thing is if they would do it, and there's a clause in there, Lloyd. Listen to me. We just went to League of Cities 2 years, right? And there must be 40 vendors with solar street lights, and I mean they are cheap and they're gorgeous. So I'm wondering if this is an attempt to have a little clause in there that says that along the way no other thing could be done. I mean, what if
Well, that is what it says. Is for 20 years we have to stay with them operating.
Yeah,
our
well, see,
lights.
that sounds like a deal to me. There's the magic clause. There's a reason they're doing that, and that's so it cuts the city off from doing a solar program that'll save us about 80% more than that. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So, I mean, Mike,
They own the streetlights, so we couldn't provide a solar project to those streetlights, because they own all the streetlights.
Well, technically, we could erect solar streetlights right next to their streetlights and then just say we don't want to use theirs anymore or something. That's why I said for staff to research if any other cities haven't done this and why.
Yeah, and okay, so I'm coming at it at a different angle and saying the same thing Mayor Pro Tem Stevens is coming up with. So we're saying the same thing. I think there's a clause in there that is going to chop us off at the knees from coming up with something that's going to save us much more than that. So I'm not seeing it as this wonderful, generous thing. My gosh,
Right.
How could we say no?
Yeah.
It's frightening. So if they want to take that clause out, that magic clause that keeps us from ever going solar, then yeah, I'm all on that. I vote yeah.
Right.
The 20 years is because they're paying for it all up front. They amortize it over 20 years.
I got news. Yeah, but we're back to this deal. If they're going to roll up there and change out a light bulb, and they're going to take out one and stick in a solar bulb, how much does that really cost?
No, the whole head has to be replaced.
They have to change the whole head.
The whole head has to be replaced.
Yeah,
But I would be interested in knowing if other cities have negotiated different terms in the contract, any of those kinds of things, because it does seem like a little bit of a carrot out there, and there might be something bad following up, and so that's why I want to enter it, making sure that because he presented it very well and made it sound very attractive, but we just need to make sure we cover ourselves since it's 20 years.
All right. So, maybe we can put out a call for, maybe to League of Cities call, or maybe SCE can give us a list of all the cities in California that have actually done this, and a list of all the ones, Lloyd, that haven't. How about that? And maybe we have a point of contact. Then we can call 10 of the ones that haven't, or that have gone solar or something, and we get a real answer here.
And I would say that if staff needs more time, because that literally gives you, isn't that next Monday that they need to have it by? I would suggest that we maybe bump it out till the June meeting, just to give them a little bit more time.
Absolutely.
One of the things I'd like to see in discussing with him earlier, I said, why would we not want to wait for solar? And he talked about some of the problems that they had with solar in trying to do duplicate poles. And so could we somehow look at that and see if anybody has done that? Because that was the discussion, that the liability of this pole affecting this pole and that kind of thing. Okay.
Direction given to staff. Got it. You're interested in reserving the right to go solar.
Yep. I am.
Or know if there's any catches.
Okay, so the next item is Parks and Rec and Quality of Life.
So we will be meeting next Tuesday at, it says 4 p.m. I believe that we meet at 5 p.m.
Thank you. I'll change that. Okay, Youth Advisory.
I did meet.
Action that we did not meet, right, correct, Lindsay?
No.
Okay. RACVB.
No, I reported before. We haven't met since then.
Economic Development.
So we will be meeting next Wednesday at 5 p.m. And I want to encourage, been working with the staff on a development guide. And so next Wednesday, we are going to be having that available for comment. So anyone interested, Mr. O'Neill again mentioned tonight wanting to see the processes written down. So we have been working on getting them written down in a concise guide. So.
Okay, other committees, boards, and commissions.
I'd just like to report on KernCog last Thursday. I hope staff is aware, they've got about $40 million in CMAQ and one other thing that they're taking applications right now, I think up to August on a bid basis. So we need to put together some projects and submit the application, see if we get some more money from them. Might as well get our share of that $40 million.
Billion or million?
Well, amen to that. Do we have a plan for, we should be applying for any kind of money, loose money lying around who's applying for that?
Didn't you mention that at the upcoming infrastructure meeting, we were going to be discussing that?
Bart sat with him and talked to him about it.
Right. But no, they were going to bring it to infrastructure for us to discuss what we want to see as a priority.
Well, I would like to see us apply for a lot of it, because I just worked through to help the federal government without getting into any details here I can't talk about, but they have pots of money that the DOD, puts in grants for different programs, right? And you just apply for it, and if you make a good, solid case for it, what do you know? And so I did this year, and we got it. So, I'd like to see us apply for as much of that as we can possibly apply for. And then if we get 30% or 40% or 50%, wouldn't that be wonderful? But we have to apply for these things. Because we heard that at the meeting the other day that we were at the mayor's conference here for the cities in Kern County. So he stood up very proudly and said, "We got it. Well, we need to be applying for it. So staff, Ron, we need to be applying for a lot of the 40 million. Okay, however y'all deem it, it's there. Money's there. Let's apply for it."
Just remember that the CMAQ grant requires a substantial match, and I believe the last couple of projects that we brought to you that were CMAQ-oriented, council kind of questioned why we were going that way versus using the funding for road maintenance. So we will identify projects and we'll bring them forward.
Because CMAQ generally means paving unpaved roads to improve air quality. So that's when we've questioned it. We've questioned adding more things to take care of when we can't take care of what we have.
We will look at, I know that Mr. Lauer and Mr. Culp are meeting to see what's available, and then we'll make the appropriate, I think we plan on bringing it to infrastructure to discuss, so we'll go from there.
If we all start coughing violently, does that improve our chances of getting this grant or something? I'm coughing. Lindsay's coughing. You start coughing, Ron.
Wallace, if we all come down with valley fever, maybe that'd help.
Yeah. Let's start coughing. All right.
Or maybe if we continue to let some of our roads grow, they will just create dust themselves.
I'm just saying.
Okay. Any other boards, committee, or commissions reports? Okay. City manager's report.
Yes, ma'am. Just a quick report on the wastewater treatment facility. We meet with the Navy again tomorrow at 8:30 to discuss more on the easement agreement. There's just a couple issues that need to be addressed. Some reports or some catalogs of some property that have to be done before the report goes up to Mr. Blocky for final approval, because we had a significant amount of exceptions that were removed from the easement, which the Navy normally never does. We meet again also on May 16th to begin discussions on the operational agreement, which is the phase 2 of the agreement. And that's all I have to report this time.
Okay, future agenda items. Anyone? I would like us to look at how we are going to deal with the aftermath of the assessment district. I would like us to get some reports and send it to either org or finance, whichever is most appropriate, and see how we do that, whether we need to do it. I would think clearly we do. How we do it, and what is the best way to accomplish it and deal with most everyone who testified and spoke either for or against all wanted to look at a sales tax issue. I would like us to see what other opportunities we have. And so if we can put that, either send it to committee, get some direction, or whatever, how the process, I don't want it to go forever. I want us to look at it and see how we deal with this, because we have significant needs. We have to take care of them, and we have buildings and other opportunities that come up, and we can't take care of opportunities. That isn't the word. Other issues that we have to take care of, and how do we deal with that? I would also like us to look at how we deal with making our staff more whole. People say how much our people make. When you compare what our staff makes, what the police department makes to other police departments, we haven't had raises in, am I wrong when I say 6 or 7 years? I think we need to look at that. How do we keep them?
It's 10 years.
All right, 10 years. People have not had raises in 10 years. I can't imagine there's anybody who sits in this city, in this entire community, and said they haven't gotten a raise. Even Social Security has got raises. I don't begrudge those, but I think we need to look at how we take care of our
Social Security is
staff.
pretty puny raises, so.
I understand, but I'm not saying, I want us to look at it and see how we maintain the staff we have when other cities, I mean, look at what California City is paying their police officers. And we need to look at that. I'm not saying we need to take action. I want us to look at it and see how we compare. Those are the 2 agenda items I'd like us to look at. Okay, any others? Okay, mayor and city council comments.
Well, I just have one. I think that everybody can speculate this way, that way, and walk around the block with all sorts of different discussions on why the assessment didn't pass. And 2 or 3 things were brought up tonight. And of the, probably 4 things were brought up as possible reasons and speculations. I'd like to speculate that I think the predominant reason, personally, is because people have had enough with taxing anything. Newsom is going to tax everything absolutely to death. There are proposals now for everything from soda drinks and this, and cigarettes have been taxed absolutely to death. There's 5 or 6 more proposals for more taxes on everything. And I think if I had to say there was one predominant reason, I think it's because people have just had enough of increased, whatever they perceive, whether it's an assessment, many perceive it to be a tax, no matter how you slice it or dice it. And I think that the overriding sentiment was that people are not paying for one more penny, period, zero. And I think it's that more than it is any kind of a statement that the thing was handled wrong or improperly or not detailed enough or not enough public meetings. And I think that, Madam Mayor, I don't know, I could be wrong, but if any kind of discussion of there being a sales tax increase on top of Brown's soda pop increase and this increase and the gas increase, and with the highest tax state citizens in the United States, I don't want to head up that committee to try to sell that to the public. I'm going to pass on that. Because I think that the referendum on that's going to be about 85, 90% no again, no matter what we do. I'm not being negative, but I think that the vote was because they don't want one more dang bill. That's what I think.
Then we need to look at what we have, how we maintain our government. And that's one of the issues. And I'm not saying one way or another. I just want us to be able to look at, come to reasonable decisions, and hear the public. Okay, mayor and city council comments, no more?
I have a quick comment. I just wanted to thank Mr. Culp and Mr. Lauer for addressing the Havens issue tonight and taking the time to meet with them and discuss it and come to a fix on it. That's outstanding. So I thank you guys for that. So, and the rest of the council too for everybody's work and involvement in it tonight. So it was pretty positive.
Okay, no other comments? Okay.
I'll just add that I did read probably about a month and a half ago, and I had sent it to the city manager, that there was an article in the LA Times that saying that basically California has reached a point of taxation in their view, and any local tax efforts we're likely going to be failing, because every day everyone in California is reading about how we're the highest taxed. They're reading about soda, tire, gas, water, all those areas. And so I do think it's going to be tough, because we were trying to be proactive and be a self-help. And so it was disappointing. But I do know we are meeting next week for the parks, and we're talking about getting an engineer's estimate on the pool, because we do want to see a pool open. And I do agree. I would love to see us be able to do more for our staff, because we do appreciate you guys, and we couldn't do this without any of you. So
we need to look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I agree. Okay, no other comments, and we'll adjourn. Thank you all.